Chapter 11:14. At the same time Yu Lingxue suffered a heavy blow. Blood spurted out of his mouth, nose, eyes and ears at the same time. On the other side, Feng Yuro was also retreating. The pressure on her side was even greater than Yu Lingxue's. She was also a woman. Everyone seemed to have the same thought. Women are always easier to deal with than men. Therefore, there were actually more people attacking Feng Yuro than Yu Lingxue. 7 corpses were already on the opposite side of Feng Yuro. One of the 2 guardians was rushing over with disheveled hair. "I'll kill you B*TC." The other had already become a pile of minced meat. Even his corpse was not left behind. He was chopped into minced meat by Feng Yuro. Feng Yuro retreated. Yu Lingxue retreated. Both husband and wife were severely injured at the same time. Bu Luqing let out a long roar. At this moment, those who used the dripping blood technique on him were all smashed into pieces by the sword light. But if he wanted to form a large circle by himself like before, he could no longer do so. Yi and the rest were energized. They attacked with all their might. He constantly urged the supreme martial artists under his command to use the dripping blood battle technique. Every time they attacked, more than one supreme martial artist would die. However, every time they attacked, Bu Luqing and the other 2 would suffer new injuries. With Bu Luqing tied down, the situation on the Moon Breeze couple's side became even more critical. The supreme martial artists flew over as if they didn't care about money, sacrificing their lives in exchange for more wounds on the Moon Breeze couple. Bang bang bang, at the same time that the Moon Breeze couple killed the 5 supreme martial artists, they were simultaneously slapped a few times by Yi and Ling Fengyun. The 2 of them let out a low groan and staggered backward. They stood back to back, but they could already feel the life force in their bodies draining away. They no longer had the strength to fight back. They could only try their best to resist. The Moon Breeze couple was already at the end of their rope. Yi and the rest simultaneously abandoned this side of the battlefield, leaving only a dozen supreme martial artists to attack the Moon Breeze couple. The focus of the others' attacks was all shifted to Bu Luqing. After a while, taking advantage of another dripping blood technique, kill. The 7 second grandmasters roared at the same time. Every one of them used all their strength to attack Bu Luqing. Then let's kill. Bu Luqing smashed one of them with his palm and crushed 3 with his sword. Then he kicked the 3 supreme martial artists 3 times in a row and shattered their bones. However, he was still forced to confront the joint attack of the 7 second grandmasters. Helplessly he took a deep breath. He had activated all of his potential, and his beard were all stretched out. With a loud roar, he suddenly slashed out with his sword. This sword strike. This was Bu Luqing's true ability. The sword light suddenly expanded and a golden dragon flew out from the sword light. Then a golden tiger appeared. The dragon and tiger worked together, shaking their heads and wagging their tails. Facing the all-out attack of the 7 second grandmasters, Yi Zichen faced them head-on. It was as if the heavenly thunder had triggered the earthly fire. At this moment even Mount Xingyun trembled. Sword of Dragon and Tiger. Bu Luqing had actually mastered the Sword of Dragon and Tiger. This is a technique that can only be comprehended by a Xiantian void-shattering expert. Could it be that Bu Luqing has already reached this level? Wu Jueqing's eyes abruptly lit up. However, he did not know that today's fierce battle had pushed Bu Luqing to a point where he could not turn back. He had actually forced Bu Luqing to break through this final step. At the same time that the Sword of Dragon and Tiger appeared in the sky, suddenly thunder rumbled. Bolts of lightning struck down violently from the snowstorm. Although Bu Luqing had made the biggest breakthrough in his life at this moment of life and death, he had also attracted the heavenly punishment. The power of Dragon and Tiger collided violently with the power of the 7 second grandmasters. The 7 second grandmasters spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Each of them retreated pathetically. At this moment their internal organs were shaken. Everyone felt that they could not even move their fingers. Especially Lan Muxue, who had not recovered from his serious injuries and was hit so hard by Bu Luqing. His body flew up uncontrollably into the sky like an embroidered ball. When he flew to the top of Yu Lingxue's head, Yu Lingxue did not care about his serious injuries. He spat out blood and jumped up, kicking Lan Muxue's back. Lan Muxue was kicked in a different direction and flew back. He was flying towards the top of Bu Luqing's head. There, a bolt of lightning was striking down crazily. Meanwhile, Lan Mushua's body was facing the lightning with a fearless attitude, as if he was embracing the world in his arms. Everyone exclaimed in unison. A ferocious bolt of white lightning struck down and hit Lan Muxue. Lan Muxue was shocked. He shouted, "Heavenly punishment! Save me! But, under such a heavenly punishment, who would dare to save him? Whoever went would die. That was for sure. Yi and the rest looked on helplessly. They did not know what to feel. Bolts of lightning struck his body continuously from the sky. After only a dozen strikes, Lan Wuxia had already turned into a piece of charcoal that was emitting green smoke. He had lost all his vitality and fell from the sky. As he fell, the lightning was still chasing after him. His bones, which had already been charred black, were flying in all directions. The heavenly punishment's lightning was probably very surprised too. This guy is obviously dead. Why can't I stop? But he did not know that this was Yu Lingshue's intention. Bu Luqing had just fought head-on against the 7-second grandmasters. After such an attack, Bu Luqing would definitely not have any strength to face the heavenly punishment. After a few bolts of lightning, Bu Luqing would probably turn into ashes. Therefore Yu Lingxue sent Lan Wuxia over at the risk of worsening his internal injuries. He used Lan Wuxia's vitality to temporarily replace Bu Luqing to face the heavenly punishment. As expected, after Lan Wuxia's body fell, although Bu Luqing was bleeding from his mouth, he managed to catch his breath and regain his ability to move. The lightning struck down suddenly. This time it was aimed at the head of the main person. Bu Luqing shouted and raised his sword. Boom! Bu Luqing shouted and stood upright. There was already a black spot on Mount Xingyun below his feet. He was struck by the heavenly lightning. Bu Luqing stood firm as the heavenly lightning struck down continuously. It was only until the last bolt that Bu Luqing spat out a mouthful of blood. His left leg could not withstand the strong pressure and broke. He sat on the ground with a thud. The lightning finally subsided. But Bu Luqing had no strength to continue fighting. Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro were severely injured. They supported their bodies with their swords, but they were already on the verge of collapse. The Dharma Supreme in Wu Jueqing's eyes flashed with jealousy. The Dharma Supreme shouted angrily, "Charge!" The three of them no longer have the strength to continue fighting. Charge forward and break their tendons and cripple their cultivation. Both of them knew that with Bu Liuqing's forced breakthrough, he should not have been able to survive the heavenly punishment. However, the Great Nebula Divide of Heavenly Secrets Array helped Bu Luqing. If the Great Nebula Divide of Heavenly Secrets Array was fully activated, the heavenly punishment would not be able to strike at all. It could only hover in the sky and wait for Bu Luqing to leave this place or the array to end before the heavenly punishment would strike. In that case, Bu Luqing would still not be able to escape death. But now that it was half activated, the heavenly punishment could still strike, but it would weaken the array by more than half. Therefore, Bu Liuqing's forced breakthrough actually made it through. After enduring the heavenly punishment, no matter how severe the injuries were, the heavenly energy would replenish them completely within the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. Then they would be forced to leave the heavens. Breaking through the void. This was the leduo of every martial artist. The Dharma Supreme did not expect that such an ambush would actually help Bu Luqing break through the last step. If Bu Luqing really left, this battle would be a waste of all their previous efforts. Currently, there was only the time it takes to burn a stick of incense to kill Bu Luqing. After this time, Bu Luqing would fully recover and be even more difficult to deal with. Moreover, when everyone attacked Bu Luqing, the heavenly punishment would think that they were trying to stop it. Then, the heavenly punishment would strike down on everyone as punishment. In that case they would really go for wool and come home shorn. Kill him as soon as possible. Wu Jueqing's eyes flashed. Even if you have luck, I will turn it into dead luck. The Dharma Supreme smiled faintly. For someone who has already succeeded in collapsing the heavens and is about to break through the void to die here after succeeding, I don't know if this is a kind of irony. Wu Jueqing laughed. This should be something that even the heavens did not expect. Killing such a strong martial artist with my own hands is a joyous thing. The Dharma Supreme laughed loudly. The two of them did not conceal their voices. Instead they sent their voices far away. The incitement of these few words was really no small matter. Killing a supreme martial artist was nothing much, but killing a strong martial artist who had already surpassed this world was something that would not happen even once in a million years. At his command, Yi Di and the rest did not care that their blood was still churning violently in their bodies and that they were bleeding from the corners of their mouths. Instead, they pounced on them even more ferociously. Even the other supreme martial artists, as long as they could still move, all of them waved their weapons and rushed forward. Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro were severely injured and could not resist. Bu Luqing had just passed the heavenly punishment and was weak all over. It seemed that even a finger would be able to kill this extremely powerful legendary supreme martial artist. The situation was really critical to the extreme. Looking at the enemies who were rushing towards them, The three of them had a look of relief in their eyes at the same time. Yulingxue let out a long cry and laughed loudly. Flicking his sword, he let out a long cry and said, "I did not expect to die together with Brother Bu today. How delightful, how delightful." Buluqing laughed. "Damn it, so old Ning is not dead. It's a little unjust for me to die here today. However, with a good brother and sister-in-law by my side, I'm not really lonely anymore." Feng Yuro said softly, "Brother Bu is a good brother. I believe that with you by our side, no matter if it's the netherworld or the world of the living, we won't be bullied." Buluqing laughed loudly and said, "Today the three of us might as well become sworn brothers and sisters before this life and death. So what if we live? So what if we die? So what if we die?" Ah. Yulingxue laughed and shouted together with Feng Yuro, "Brother." Buluqing agreed loudly and shouted, "Second brother, sister-in-law, let's fight it out with them. Fight it out with them." The Moon Breeze couple shouted in unison and rushed out with their swords. They said loudly, "In the netherworld I will help my wife to pave the way for brother." "All right." Buluqing shouted, "Regardless of life and death, we'll walk the same path after all. Fight with all your might and we'll have no regrets in this life. In the netherworld we'll be brothers. In the netherworld we'll never be extinguished." To be continued. Chapter 11:15. Go ahead and pave the way then. Yi and Xiao Se laughed sinisterly as they charged over. Moon Breeze wobbled as they raised their swords to meet them. Both of them were already at the end of their rope. The severity of their injuries was really indescribable. In this battle, the dripping blood battle tactic had used up the life potential of both of them. Their entire bodies were already completely exhausted. Although they were charging with their swords, they actually had no energy left. They couldn't even walk like a normal person. If the battle ended now, even without the enemy killing them, as long as a miracle didn't happen, both of them wouldn't be able to survive. The only reason they could still move now was because of the primordial violet vapor. However, the husband and wife made a charging posture. Even if they had to die fighting. "You want to humiliate us? Dream on." Moon Breeze exchanged a look, seeing the gentleness and determination in each other's eyes. "Now we are going to die. As husband and wife in this life, I have no regrets. Last look, remember your appearance, remember my appearance. If there is a next life, don't forget. As husband and wife." In the dark, Zhuge Hutu's eyes widened. His palms were almost sweating. In the dark, the Dharma Supreme and Wu Jueqing in the high ground were also fully focused. If that woman wanted to strike, it would probably be at this moment. If the Great Array was to be activated, it would also be at this moment. Therefore, although Buluqing and the other two seemed to be doomed this time, in reality that might not be the case. Both parties were about to come into contact. Right at this moment, a long howl sounded, like a dragon's roar and a phoenix's cry, soaring through the sky. It was as if the sky had been lifted immediately. The darkness in the entire sky suddenly disappeared. In this instant, everyone clearly heard a sound. Chi. Everyone had the same feeling at the same time, as if the blue sky above them was a curtain. Now it was lifted by a corner with one hand and torn apart with a chi. Only then did the white snow in the sky start to fall. As far as the eye could see, it was a vast expanse of white. Everyone's eyes were on the darkness for a long time. Suddenly being stimulated by the white light, they couldn't help but squint. A figure in white stood proudly in midair and said indifferently, "I said stop." Tearing apart the void. Wu Jueqing gasped. "You are indeed a great Dao expert." Zi Sheqing had actually arrived before Buluqing achieved his breakthrough. However, just as she was about to descend, she felt the heavenly might tremble and hurriedly hid herself. Buluqing's heavenly punishment came at that moment. If Zi Sheqing had taken action at that moment, heaven's punishment would have targeted both her and Buluqing. In that case, it would only be the power of vibration. It was enough to shock the heavily injured Moon Breeze couple to death. Therefore she could only wait. In any case, there was no danger. When the heavenly punishment arrived, anyone who came into contact with it would be targeted by it. The others didn't dare to make a move either. The Dharma Supreme, Wu Jueqing and Zi Sheqing were all experts who had already surpassed this level. When the heavenly punishment arrived. Furthermore, he couldn't move recklessly. Now that the heavenly punishment had ended and the special clouds in the sky had dispersed, Zi Sheqing finally came down. He murmured, "Although it's a little late, it's not too late." The Moon Breeze couple had already lost all their strength. The moment they saw Zi Sheqing, they seemed to have lost all their strength. His body went limp. He collapsed onto the ground. Qin Mingqi and Shi Jing were the fastest. They couldn't stop themselves and rushed over. Their long swords were about to pierce into Feng Yuro and Yu Lingshua's bodies. A white figure flashed and Zi Shiqing had already appeared in front of the two of them. She shielded the Moon Breeze couple behind her and slapped Chen Mingqi's face with her left hand. She said angrily, "Didn't you hear me when I asked you to stop?" Her right hand slapped Shi Jing's face and she asked, "Are you deaf?" Two slaps passed through the sharp sword light. One on the left and one on the right. The two of them couldn't even see clearly. They didn't even have time to react before they were sent flying. They rolled and landed on the ground. Their heads were spinning and they could only feel a buzzing sound in their heads. One on the left and one on the right, their faces swelled up at a speed visible to the naked eye. Yi Di and the rest who had just stopped retreated a few steps and pulled a safe distance away. Everyone's eyes were filled with fear. They all knew that this woman was very strong, but they didn't expect her to be so strong. One moment she was still 1,000 feet high in the air. The next moment she had sent two 8th grade peak-level supreme martial artists flying. And it was a slap on their faces. At this moment there was complete silence. Everyone held their breaths. Yi Di and the rest didn't even have time to wipe away the blood on their mouths. They were stunned. Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro didn't have it easy in the battle just now, but how could they have it easy too? The cultivation of the Moon Breeze couple was much higher than that of Yi Di and the rest. Especially after they had consumed the primordial violet vapor, they were directly one level above them. Yi Di and the rest also had their internal organs shaken and blood spurted from their mouths and noses. They were about to succeed, but this powerful woman finally came out. Under everyone's gaze, Zi Shiqing's white robe was whiter than snow. Standing in the snow, she looked even more holy and noble, unapproachable. She stepped on the snow and slowly walked 2 steps to the front of the Moon Breeze couple. She squatted down and stuffed a pill into their mouths. On the other side, Chen Mingqi and Shi Jing roared and were about to stand up. Zi Shiqing turned around abruptly, her eyes cold. "Lie down. Don't move." However, Shi Jing and Chen Mingqi were also the elder masters of the two big clans. How could they afford to lose face in front of everyone? "You want me to lie down so I have to lie down with my butt up? What kind of image is this?" Both of them pushed off the ground and jumped up. Blood was flowing from the corners of their mouths. They looked at Zi Shiqing with hatred. "Demoness." Before they finished speaking, Zi Shiqing had already appeared in front of them and slapped Shi Jing's face. "You are really deaf. Really deaf. Really deaf." Slap, 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 slap. Every time he scolded her she would slap him a few times. Shi Jing wanted to resist, but he felt that he couldn't move at all. He wanted to open his mouth and scold her, but he couldn't make a sound. He could only stand there and take the slaps. The most ironic thing was that Shi Jing's long sword was still in his hand. And it was straight forward. The sword was shining brightly. He only needed to stab it forward and it would pierce into the body of this detestable woman, but he couldn't move at all. He could only raise his head, puff out his chest, straighten his back, hold his sword and valiantly take the slaps. Shi Jing's eyes were filled with anger and humiliation. He was already like a volcano. At this moment Shi Jing only wanted to die. To be tortured like this in front of so many people, and most of them were his own grandsons and juniors. He had really lost all his face today. Following the loud slaps, Shi Jing's old face was first slapped to the left, then to the right, then back again and back again. After going back and forth for dozens of times, Zi Shiqing loosened her grip. She slapped Shi Jing's face that was already swollen like a pig's head, causing him to fall to the ground. He actually went back to the position where he was lying down just now. "I told you to lie down, so lie down." As she said, she turned around and slapped Chen Mingqi's face. He asked, "8th grade supreme martial artist is so awesome? I told you to lie down, and you still dare to get up? I told you to get up. I told you to get up. Get up, get up, get up, come." Every time she scolded him she would slap him. Again dozens of times. Chen Mingqi's face also turned around and turned around. And turned around again. And turned around again, just like a puppet, only the cracking sounds of his neck bones could be heard. These continuous slaps were extremely loud and crisp. Moreover, as Zi Shiqing slapped them, she was also controlling them to not let the blood from their mouths and noses stain her white clothes. She was a person who loved cleanliness, all around. Everyone's faces were filled with grief and indignation. Especially the supreme martial artists of the Shi clan and Qin clan, all of them were breathing heavily. Their eyes were red and they looked like they were about to burst. They only felt that their chests were about to explode from grief and indignation at this moment. But now the elder master was in the hands of someone else. Not to mention that they did not dare to charge forward, not to mention that they would not be a match for her even if they did. Even if they did, they had to hold back. And the Dharma Supreme had not given the order. Although everyone was gritting their teeth, they could only bear with it. After a while, the slaps were finally over. Zi Sheqing gave the last slap, causing Qin Mingqi to fall to the ground and lie down in the same position as before, side by side with Shi Jing. Only then did she say with satisfaction, "Isn't it good now?" Everyone has to be slapped 10 times before they are willing to listen. How despicable. After saying that, she turned and asked the Moon Breeze couple in a gentle voice, "How are you guys?" Yu Lingxue laughed bitterly and said, "Thank you, Lord Zi, for your miraculous medicine. For the time being we should not die. However, the main thing is that our vitality has been greatly damaged and our foundations are almost destroyed. Looks like we will need quite a long time to recuperate." Zi Sheqing nodded. "It's all right. Both of you have life force origin. Although your foundations have been shaken, you will be able to recover in a short time." At this moment, the two people on the ground groaned and tried to get up again stubbornly. Their eyes were already filled with madness. Zi Sheqing stretched out her leg without a word and kicked Shi Jing until he was on top of Qin Mingqi. Then she lifted her leg gently and stepped on Shi Jing's back. She said to Yu Lingxue, "Old Bu's spirit has collapsed?" Yu Lingxue nodded. "Yes." Poof. Shi Jing, who was below, was stomped hard onto the ground. How sturdy was the ground of Mount Xingyun. Instantly, all 4 of his front teeth were knocked out. His face was flattened and stuck to the ground, blood flowing out. On the opposite side, Xiao Sei stepped forward. Finally, he could not help but say, "This expert, your cultivation is far superior to ours. If you want to kill us, just do it quickly. Why do you have to humiliate us like this?" "Humiliate you?" Zi Sheqing smiled. "First, you used tricks, then ambushes, then besieges. Finally, you even kept a trap waiting for me. Now you are actually blaming me for humiliating you?" Xiao Sei's old face turned red. He said, "Although we used tricks, we also fought fair and square. But you are humiliating us." Zi Sheqing laughed coldly. She exerted more force on her leg and the two people below groaned again. Then she looked up at Xiao Sei and said indifferently, "Yes, I am humiliating you. So what? Do you have an opinion? Come. Let me see how a hero like you has an opinion." This chapter is the first chapter to make up for the missing chapters. G begging for votes. To be continued. Chapter 11:16. Xiao Sei took a step back and said angrily, "What opinion do I have? It's just a pity?" His expression was actually a little cowardly at heart. If this woman were to do the same to him, then, he might as well die. Zi Sheqing sneered and said, "You are indeed a hero who speaks up for justice." Xiao Sei's face turned red. At this moment, the Dharma Supreme's voice sounded. "However, no matter how high one's cultivation is, it doesn't mean that one is omnipotent." Zi Sheqing said indifferently, "Oh?" The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, "Activate the array. Now it officially begins. Slay the Tao." At his command, Zhuge Hutu immediately activated the array. Instantly the world became miserable and the wind blew. The sky that was torn open by Zi Sheqing just now closed up again. This time the sun and moon really lost their light. Yi and the rest retreated in an orderly manner and hid in the darkness. Wu Jueqing floated and occupied the eye of the array. He smiled indifferently and said, "Lady, are you from the Black Blood Forest?" Zi Sheqing smiled indifferently and said, "Even your ancestor Wu Qinfeng doesn't dare to call me lady. Wu Jueqing, you are really bold." Wu Jueqing laughed softly and said, "If it's one-on-one, I may not be your match. But now, it won't be so easy for you to get out of this array. Why wouldn't I dare?" Zi Sheqing sneered. At this moment there was a tremor in the sky. Bu Luqing, who was on the ground, slowly stood up. His cultivation was fully recovered. Zi Sheqing looked up. She smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Bu, looks like you won't be able to leave for now. This array has even shielded the heavenly secrets." "Even if I can leave, I won't." Bu Luqing said indifferently, "Old Ning has not recovered from his serious injuries, how can I leave with peace of mind?" At the moment when he collapsed the sky, his spiritual senses were sharp and he actually sensed that Ning Tianya was not dead. He was greatly relieved. "After today you can leave with peace of mind. I advise you, if you can go up, it's better to go up as soon as possible." Zi Sheqing said indifferently, "There are many people who will have to go up in the future. You go up first. It's a good opportunity to explore the path." Bu Luqing started to ponder. At this moment, the demonic aura in the array became more and more intense. A heavy pressure seemed to communicate with the heavens and earth. It pressed down ferociously. Zi Sheqing did not seem to notice and allowed the other party to activate the power of the formation to the maximum. She said to Bu Luqing, "When the battle starts later, you only need to take care of the Moon Breeze couple. Leave the rest to me. Be careful." Bu Luqing said solemnly, "This formation is not simple." Zi Sheqing said indifferently, "If I wasn't confident, why would I let them set up the formation?" Haha, Bu Luqing laughed and said, "However, you've already come out." On the other hand, the Book Friends upload updates side was weak. "If there's any danger, I'm afraid we won't be able to save them in time." Zi Sheqing was silent for a while and said, "We can't possibly protect them all. Even if he could do it, he couldn't. They had to walk their own path in the end. That's why I suggest that you leave after this incident. This time, I estimate that there will definitely be casualties, but it will definitely not be a complete wipeout. The occasional casualty was also a lesson for them. If there are no casualties, that would be even better." Bu Luqing also sighed. He remained silent for a while. Then he finally said, "All right." Then he said, "We're leaving. Old Ning is seriously injured. Given Moon Breeze couple's current situation, they need to recuperate for at least a year. Then after a year they won't have any strong backing." Zi Sheqing said, "That's why they can grow." Bu Luqing frowned. "But the other party? After this battle they won't have any backing." Zi Sheqing's eyes were full of murderous intent. She exerted force with her feet. With a bang she kicked Shi Jing and Chen Mingqi's bodies out. With a loud crash they landed on the mountain rocks. Both of them were smashed into pieces. "You have me, I have you." They didn't even have time to cry out before they died an unnatural death just like that. It was also at this moment that the wind suddenly blew wildly, as if thousands of ghosts were crying together. A voice said, "Great nebula divide of heavenly secrets, great array. Slaying of the Tao." The next moment, Wu Jueqing let out a long howl and shouted, "Kill!" Spots of starlight suddenly lit up in the land of shadows. Little by little they moved quickly. As if following some kind of strange rhythm and trajectory, they were moving. Not a single human figure could be seen, but one could feel that there were definitely many human figures. A strong current, as strong as a raging wave, came crashing toward them just like that. Bu Luqing turned pale with fright when the strong wind reached him. The strength of this strong wind was at least 5 times stronger than his and Ning Tianya's combined strength. Zi Sheqing raised her hand and sent a wisp of divine consciousness into Bu Luqing's body. She said, "Protect them. No matter what happens, don't move." Then she turned and shot toward the strong current. Her slender body was like a white arrow, shooting straight toward the raging waves. Wherever she went, she actually used her own body to bore a hole through this strong current. She flew past swiftly and fiercely. Bu Luqing, who was watching from behind, was dumbfounded. What the heck? She could do that too? It was only now that Zi Sheqing really revealed her true strength. Her true strength was far higher than what the Dharma Supreme and Wu Jueqing had guessed. It was also higher than what Chu Yang had guessed. Especially after receiving so much primordial violet vapor from Chu Yang, Zi Sheqing, who had attained the Tao state, was at least twice as strong as herself before receiving the primordial violet vapor. Before attaining the Tao state, Zi Sheqing had already agreed to this decisive battle. What would happen after attaining the Tao state? As expected, it was the combined power of the 50 supreme martial artists of the Ling clan who had struck out from the shadow starlight. They had used the function of the Great Nebula Divide of Heavenly Secrets Array to combine the power of 50 supreme martial artists into one. The power of the entire attack was more than 100 times stronger than that of a single person. Moreover, with the addition of the Great Nebula Divide of Heavenly Secrets Array, everyone was full of confidence. Although this attack was only a probing attack, Zi Sheqing would definitely be in a difficult situation. She might even be injured on the spot. But what no one expected was that, along with a strange sound, Zi Sheqing's figure suddenly appeared in front of everyone. She raised her fair palm and struck toward them. And the place where she was standing was actually the place where the force of the attack came from. Ling Fingyun's expression changed drastically. He shouted, "Retreat! Disperse!" Since she was standing here, it proved that the concentrated force of the attack was useless against her. Under such circumstances they had to come up with another plan. However, although this shout was timely, it was still too late. Since Zi Sheqing had attacked, she came with killing intent, how could she let anyone escape? With one strike, the fair palm turned into thousands of copies, as if a pure white lotus had turned into a mountain. Suddenly it pressed down. The supreme martial artists of the Ling clan had just struck out and were waiting to see the results. Who knew that disaster would befall them? The slap landed on the ground like a mosquito. More than 30 supreme martial artists were turned into minced meat under this slap. Ling Fingyun's scalp went numb. He brought his men and rolled backward. Under the protection of the array, they turned into starlight and disappeared. Zi Shiqing snorted and flew up. She chased after them and struck out 2 consecutive palms, but actually hit nothing. The 2 palms landed on the rocks of Mount Xingyun. Such a sturdy Mount Xingyun was actually left with 2 deep and small palm prints. The people in the dark sucked in a breath of cold air. Even someone like Bu Luqing couldn't move a rock. Zi Shiqing actually made a half-foot deep hole. The Dharma Supreme shouted, "Split the heavens." Zhuge Hutu let out a long howl. Howls echoed from 8 directions. Starlight flashed. 30 people had already arrived behind the starlight of the Ling clan to support and replenish their strength. The Shi clan, Qin clan and Lan clan no longer had a leader. The Dharma Supreme had already sent a high-level supreme martial artist over to temporarily take charge of one side. Wu Jueqing stood beside the supreme martial artist. Starlight shone on him. Suddenly he let out a long howl. In an instant the wind and clouds stirred. "First star position," Zhuge Hutu shouted. From the direction of the Yi clan, a ray of white light rushed up, breaking a thin hole in the pitch-black night sky created by the array. Immediately, the starlight of the entire Great Nebula array shook rapidly and scattered in all directions. Finally, it merged into a single point and condensed on the thin hole. The next moment, a thin bolt of lightning rushed down like a thunderbolt. From thin to thick, when it landed, it was actually as thick as a water bucket. It came crashing down on Zi Shiqing. Zi Shiqing frowned and dodged. In a flash, she was 300 feet away. However, that bolt of lightning seemed to have grown eyes. It turned a corner and chased after her. Like a maggot in one's bones, it chased after her relentlessly. Zi Shiqing was shocked. This thing was really strange. She purposely ran around, leading this bolt of lightning back and forth to see if it could be used up. However, after she ran around 100 times, this bolt of lightning still chased after her relentlessly. It did not weaken at all. Zi Shiqing was shocked. She stood still and used her palm to meet it head-on. With a loud boom, Zi Shiqing leaned back violently. However, this bolt of lightning turned back into starlight and disappeared. Zi Shiqing let out a long sigh. Her expression finally turned serious. She remembered Chu Yang's words, "Perhaps human strength cannot kill you. However, in this world, the power that can kill you is not just human strength alone." Now, Zi Shiqing began to agree with this statement. At least, the strange power of thunder and lightning in this attack was 10 times more powerful than the Ling clan's attack just now. Moreover, the power was concentrated and not scattered. It could even chase after the target and there was no way to avoid it. If he could continue to attack endlessly like this, he was afraid that he might really die here. However, Zi Shiqing was even more certain that they could not use it endlessly. Because if they said that such an attack did not consume energy, she would definitely not believe it. In the shadows, a few groans could be heard. At the Yi clan's location, Yidi's face turned pale. Someone floated behind him like a ghost. It was the Dharma Supreme. He asked directly, "How was the effect?" 3 of our members were killed. It hurt our reputation. Yidi took in a long breath. The other party did not have it easy either. I heard her groan just now, and only 3 people died on your side. 3 deaths in exchange for a groan from the other party. The Dharma Supreme was actually relieved. He said, "How many more times can the Yi clan sustain such an attack?" I continue to write. My head hurts a little. The next update should be at least 3 o'clock. If you can't wait, go to sleep and watch it tomorrow. Gee, today is Monday, please recommend me, comment me. Gee, there's still the monthly ticket. Chapter 11:17. Ed calculated silently and said, "Barely. There's still a few more times." Good. The Dharma Supreme said, "Those who are injured should hurry up and recover. If you have medicine, hurry up and use it. Now the other clans will take over first. After a round of rotation, it will be the Yi clan's turn to attack." Yi nodded heavily. Next, the starry lightning kept appearing in the sky. Zi Shiqing also kept dealing with them one by one. Other than that, there was no other way. Because this big array actually blocked out human aura and divine secrets. Nothing could be detected. She could only fight passively. But Zi Shiqing changed her form. From the initial wandering, she stood quietly at a high place, allowing the lightning to strike her down. Then she retaliated with a palm. As the lightning became more frequent, Zi Sheqing finally showed signs of fatigue. She seemed to be seriously injured. When she took on the lightning, her body also retreated more and more. Her body shook more and more violently. It seemed that her strength was not enough. Yi, the Dharma Supreme, and the rest were secretly happy. No matter how strong and powerful you are, how many times can you take? Just the continuous depletion of energy can exhaust you to death. But what they did not know was that Zi Sheqing was also very happy. The intensity of such attacks was not small. Taking on each of them head-on was indeed very exhausting. But Zi Sheqing's cultivation was endless. Her fatigue now was just an act after she took on more than 30 lightning strikes. If it was really based on cultivation, Zi Sheqing felt that she could at least take on more than 100 of such heavy attacks. Of course, if the heavy pill that Chuyang gave her was included, Zi Sheqing could at least take on 1,500 strikes. More than that, however, the people from the big clans and law enforcement officers couldn't use it 1,500 times. 100 times was already the limit. Every strike would reflect the impact. At least 2 or 3 people would die each time. Even the big clans could not bear such losses. But the situation now was that as long as the big array was not removed, no one could get out of this array. So far, the starry lightning had attacked 34 times. And there should have been 771 supreme martial artists on the side of the big clans and law enforcement officers. A total of 100 of them were killed. Once Zi Sheqing came, another 32 were killed. A total of 540 people participated in the attack on Zi Sheqing. But after these 33 strikes of starry lightning, although the enemy looked more and more pathetic. However, on his side. However, they lost another 117 men. Currently, there were 432 survivors. I didn't count wrong, right? Right now, both sides were secretly enjoying themselves, but it was unknown who was truly enjoying themselves. However, the one who was most pleased was probably the Dharma Supreme. No matter which clan or which side launched the attack, the Dharma Supreme would definitely go over and check on them. How much did they lose? How many had died? As he asked the question, he quietly absorbed the life origin power of the deceased autarch. He had even earned the gratitude of the great families. After dozens of consecutive attacks, Zi Sheqing was still on the verge of collapse. However, the number of experts from the big clans and law enforcement officers had been reduced to 300. Buluqing and the other 2, who were originally on tenterhooks, finally felt relieved. Even Yi Di and the others realized that something was wrong. Fuck. Who was the one exhausting who? Why does this situation seem a little strange? Lord Dharma Supreme? Something's not right. Yi Di frowned. The Great Array gathers our cultivation to 1 point, which is equivalent to increasing it by 3 times or more. Then, with the help of the nebula, it increases it by several times, right? In this case, even if there were 10 Ning Tianyas and Buluqing joining forces, the current attack would still be able to kill them. By right, it should be able to kill them in 1 strike. Now, this woman has been wobbling like this since an hour ago, and she is still wobbling like this now. Yi Di hissed and sucked in a breath of cold air. She is exhausting us. The Dharma Supreme frowned and said, "Is it that serious?" Yi Di sighed heavily. "I'm afraid so. In this great array she can't find us at all, nor can she attack us. She can only use this method to exhaust our strength. Lord Dharma Supreme, as there are fewer and fewer people, the number of people who are killed by the rebound of each starry lightning attack is also increasing. If this goes on, it's not a solution." The Dharma Supreme frowned and pondered for a while. Then he said, "If that's the case, I'll tell Zhuge to attack from all directions at the same time. Destroy the opponent in 1 strike and get it done once and for all." Yi Di said gratefully, "Thank you for your understanding, Lord Dharma Supreme." Then the Dharma Supreme turned and left. The Dharma Supreme organized and tried his best to instigate this massacre of Tao with only one motive: to collect the life force origin. To him, Chuyang was not the master of tribulation sword anyway. No matter how powerful he was or how powerful his forces were, he was just a force in the heavens. Even if he developed to become as powerful as the big clans, what could he do? Could he still threaten his position as the Dharma Supreme? But if he didn't instigate such a great battle, where was he going to collect so much life force origin? Something like the Dharma Supreme nourishing the heavens only happened once in 1,000 years. Did he have to go around hunting supreme martial artists? Coincidentally, Zi Sheqing's strong appearance gave the big clans a sense of crisis. Thus, the Dharma Supreme meticulously planned this massacre of Tao. This battle would not only provide him with abundant life force origin of the supreme martial artists. If he succeeded, he would also be able to obtain the life force origin of a great Tao expert like Zi Sheqing. This was something that he had always dreamed of. Zi Sheqing was exhausting the strength here. After more than 20 times the Dharma Supreme could tell. But at that time he was still busy collecting and felt that his strength was enough, so he wasn't anxious. But now he felt that it was about time. In the Dharma Supreme's mind, he had now collected the life force origin of more than 400 supreme martial artists. Although it was much inferior compared to the Dharma Supreme nourishing the heavens, it could be said that it was a great harvest now. He might as well get rid of Zi Sheqing as soon as possible so that he could rest easy. Otherwise, because this was not his mother's body, his life force origin was always suppressed in his body and could not be used. This was always a big problem. Under the Dharma Supreme's planning, the big clans quickly adjusted. Zi Sheqing was wondering why there was suddenly no movement. The next moment there was a sudden swoosh. Stars flashed all over the sky. Then, a ray of starlight and lightning attacked at the same time. The starlight lightning first circled around in the sky, then merged into one at the point of intersection. It was a few zhang thick with a blazing white light and a bright, multicolored luster. There was a faint purple aura as it crazily descended. Zi Sheqing let out a long howl and suddenly her white clothes puffed up. With a bang her long hair broke free from the restraint of her hair band. Every strand of her hair stood straight in the air and her whole body emitted a faint purple aura. Her two hands shook and her sleeves suddenly exploded into ashes. Her slender body floated up slowly and her face was also covered by a layer of purple aura. As for her two hands, their original color could no longer be seen clearly. Her entire body was covered by the purple aura. This attack was extraordinary. Zi Sheqing also finally took out her trump card. Her two hands intertwined and then flew up fiercely towards the ray of lightning that was a few feet thick. Before it got close, her two hands had already struck out continuously. Rays of purple aura were like rays of beautiful lightning in the night sky, facing the ray of starlight and lightning. It flew over continuously. In the shadows, Bu Luqing and the other two opened their mouths wide. Life and death, victory and defeat, all depended on this attack. Everyone was well aware of this. After this attack, if Zi Sheqing died, the massacre of the Tao would be a success. After this attack, if Zi Sheqing did not die but was seriously injured, it would only be a half success. If she was only lightly injured, then it would announce the decline of the big clans and law enforcement officers. Because Zi Sheqing would definitely not let them off. With Zi Sheqing's current abilities, once she left the Great Nebula Divide of Heavenly Secrets Array, even if the Dharma Supreme and Wu Jueqing joined forces, they would definitely not be her match. This was undeniable. The gazes of hundreds of people were all nervously watching the collision of the white and purple lights. Their eyes did not blink and each and every one of them was anxiously beating. Under everyone's gaze, Zi Sheqing's first ray of purple palm energy finally collided with the lightning. There was a loud bang. The whole Mount Xingyun also started to tremble. Then the second, third and fourth palm energy, continuous booms. Some of the third grade and below supreme martial artists were already killed by such loud booms before the recoil could return. All the supreme martial artists below the third grade were all bleeding from all orifices. Zi Sheqing struck out 10 times in a frenzy. The 100th palm energy directly met the ray of starlight and lightning with both hands. Her long hair fluttered like waves and she roared, "All of you die." She pushed outwards fiercely. With a boom, the ray of starlight and lightning was actually smashed into pieces by her hands, turning into rays of light that shot out in all directions. The sky above, which was completely sealed by the array, actually let out the sound of glass breaking. Then the darkness in the sky suddenly disappeared. The snow was still fluttering. Blood-curdling screams resounded in the sky as the Supreme Being experts in various places revealed themselves one after another. The extremely powerful rebounding force sent the Supreme Beings of the great clans, who were controlling the array, flying into the air. Most of the weaker ones were already smashed into minced meat in the air. The horror of the tremors this time was simply unparalleled. 350 Supreme Martial Artist experts were actually reduced by 352 in an instant. It was as if the sky was raining blood in the midst of the heavy snow. Even Wu Jueqing, who was at the highest point, let out a loud scream. Blood spurted out of his mouth and he fell straight down. Only Yi Di, Xiao Se, Ling Fengyun, Zhuge Hutu, Qing Chou, the Dharma Supreme, Wu Jueqing and an 8th grade Supreme Martial Artist were left. Among these people, other than the Dharma Supreme who did not participate in the attack of the array at all and did not suffer any recoil and was still intact, Wu Jueqing, including him, had blood dripping from the corners of his mouth. Zhuge Hutu, whose cultivation was slightly weaker, barely managed to preserve his life. However, he was already lying on the ground, unable to move. Opposite him, Zi Sheqing's delicate body shook violently. She retreated continuously, leaving a deep footprint on the ground with every step she took. She took several steps back before she finally stopped. She cried out 3 times and spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood. Her face was as white as paper. However, she actually used the most barbaric method to directly break through the great nebula divide of heavenly secrets array by herself. In a situation where she did not even meet with them, she slaughtered almost all the enemies in one go. This kind of cultivation was simply earth-shattering. 5th update on 21st, Chapter 3 to make up for what I owe. Gee, I really can't take it anymore. I'm going to sleep. I'll continue to work hard when I wake up. Please support me with your monthly votes. Thank you. Gee, also I'd like to recommend an exceptionally good book. Yu Guan's historical novel Drunken Nation. A book written by Sister Yu is definitely of good quality. I dare to pat my chest and guarantee that it will definitely be good. If you don't like it, come back and chop me with a knife. Everyone please go and bookmark it. There's a link on our page, you can go there directly. You have to go. Oh, to be continued. Chapter 11:18. The 8 of them looked at Zi Xiecheng as if they had seen a ghost. That kind of inexplicable horror, that kind of extreme shock was already beyond words. With the power of one person, against hundreds of supreme martial artists, combined with the power of the array and multiplied by several times, she actually defeated all of them in one move. Killed. Such a fact made everyone feel like they were dreaming. Nightmare. Even the Dharma Supreme and Wu Juecheng looked at Zi Xiecheng, trembling all over. The horror in the depths of their eyes was hard to hide. Although Zi Xiecheng's face was pale, her gaze was sharp as she looked at the people opposite her. She gently reached out her hand and wiped away the blood at the corner of her mouth. She smiled lightly. This is your battle to slay the Tao? It is indeed powerful. She was not asking a question. She also knew that no one would answer. She just continued to speak. As early as 20 days ago, after that auction, all of you had already discussed slaying the Tao in the underground secret chamber of the Zhuge clan. I thought it was some earth-shattering big plan, but I didn't expect it to be like this. Zi Xiecheng said lightly. Yi Di raised his head abruptly. You already knew? Zi Xiecheng nodded lightly. From that day onwards, I have been looking forward to this battle coming soon. Killing them one by one, how can it be compared to gathering them together and destroying them all at once? She sneered. Moreover, you were willing to gather the experts of the clan to send them to their deaths. I am more than happy to fulfill your wish. You want to slay the Tao, but how do you know that I want to do the same? Slay a Tao. Everyone's face was ashen. Their flawless plan was actually all in the hands of the other party? Bu Luqing was suddenly enlightened. No wonder Zi Xiecheng was not anxious about this matter and did not take it to heart at all. It turned out that she already had a plan and had been waiting for the other party's trap. Today's battle has finally come. Zi Xiecheng said coldly. What else do you have to say? Everyone's face was ashen. Only 8 out of the 771 supreme martial artists were left. What else could they say? Zi Xiecheng turned around and faced Wu Juecheng. She said somewhat regretfully, your ancestor and I were originally friends. I did not come here today to kill you either. But you were in charge of the Eye of the Formation and didn't hesitate to consume the power of your soul to guide the starlight lightning to kill me. This time I can't forgive you. Wu Juecheng raised his head abruptly, a look of disbelief in his eyes. What? The power of his natal source spirit? What source spirit's power? You don't know? Zi Xiecheng could not help but feel a little surprised. You're so enthusiastic about this matter. You didn't hesitate to use your own body to block the Eye of the Formation, expend your primordial spirit, draw heavenly powers, enter the stars and transform into lightning to kill me. You actually didn't know? Wu Juecheng's face darkened and he lowered his head deeply. No one knew what he was thinking about. Then he slowly raised his head and focused his gaze on the Dharma Supreme's face. Then he shifted his gaze from the Dharma Supreme's face to Zhuge Hutu's face. His voice was so calm that it was somewhat frightening. The power of the origin soul, what is going on? The Dharma Supreme's expression was grave as he turned to look at Zhuge Hutu. Zhuge, what is going on? Why was it related to his natal source spirit? What the hell are you doing? Zhuge Hutu lay on the ground looking at the Dharma Supreme, somewhat at a loss of what to do. For a moment he actually could not speak. After a long while, a hint of understanding suddenly flashed in his eyes. He pointed at the Dharma Supreme and said, You? The Dharma Supreme leaped up and floated in front of Zhuge Hutu. He raised his hand and slapped him across the face. But what exactly is going on? Zhuge Hutu's throat gurgled but he could not say a single word. The Dharma Supreme let out a long sigh, extremely sorrowful. Brother Wu, I have let you down. You can interrogate this person. As he spoke, he took 3 steps back, somewhat disheartened, exposing Zhuge Hutu to Wu Jueqing. Wu Jueqing's face was filled with murderous intent as he strode over. Zhuge Hutu, very good. You even dared to plot against me and actually plotted against my natal source spirit? Suddenly Zi Sheqing shouted, Be careful. Behind Wu Jueqing, the Dharma Supreme suddenly made his move. His 2 hands carried a force that could topple mountains and overturn seas as he firmly and violently slapped Wu Jueqing's back. A huge force suddenly erupted. This attack had already condensed all the strength of the Dharma Supreme in his lifetime. Wu Jueqing was completely unprepared. After being severely injured, he was instantly sent flying in anger and tumbled towards Zi Sheqing. Cracking sounds could be heard from his body. Countless bones had already been broken and he was spitting out mouthfuls of fresh blood. As for the Dharma Supreme behind him, after that palm strike, he quickly used his movement techniques and used all his strength to travel thousands of miles in an inch. With a swoosh, he was already a few thousand feet away. Zi Sheqing caught Wu Jueqing and threw him onto the ground. When she leaped up and chased after him, the Dharma Supreme had already become a small black dot in the distance. Zi Sheqing snorted angrily. She stretched out her hand and tore the space apart. She took a step forward and reached the position of the Dharma Supreme's black dot. However, in just a short while, the Dharma Supreme had already traveled another 1,000 feet away. Zi Sheqing let out a soft roar and sent out a palm strike. The Dharma Supreme, who was sprinting, was already nearing the south gate of Tianji City. Suddenly he felt the pressure behind him increase. He knew that Zi Sheqing was chasing after him. If she caught up to him, he would definitely die today even if he had 100 lives. In a state of panic, he suddenly used all his might to activate the life force origin energy in his body. Disregarding his own life and death, he used both forces at the same time and increased his speed abruptly. With a boom, Zi Sheqing's palm strike finally arrived just as the Dharma Supreme reached the south gate of Tianji City. With a distance of 1,000 feet between them, it hit the Dharma Supreme hard. The Dharma Supreme let out a loud cry. With a loud bang, he dashed forward and entered the city gate. With a loud boom, the entire southern gate of Tianji City collapsed. A strong gust of wind rushed all the way into Tianji City. Within the range of 300 feet, all the houses and buildings of humans and beasts were reduced to dust. The Dharma Supreme's figure flashed in the dust. One could vaguely see that his left arm and shoulder were gone. There was a big hole in his back. However, in a flash he disappeared without a trace. Zi Sheqing snorted and followed closely into the south gate of Tianji City. There was a cloud of dust and smoke. Purple qi was rising in front of them. Zi Sheqing went forward to take a look and saw a pool of blood on the ground. Purple qi was gathering and dispersing in the pool of blood. Life origin energy? Why is there so much life origin energy in his blood? Zi Sheqing was a little surprised, but she did not care. She struck out with her palm and the ball of blood flew away and disappeared without a trace. Then, when he tried to lock onto it with his divine soul, he found that it was gone. Something like a divine soul lock, if it was shifted or thrown off, it would not disappear. There was only one possibility for such a thing to happen, and that was that this person was already dead. Zi Sheqing searched one round but did not find the Dharma Supreme's body. She used her divine perception to scan the area one last time before she flew up and hurried back. There were still many enemies to be dealt with over there. Furthermore, the heavy snow in the sky was accompanied by the faint sound of thunder. This was the warning of the heavens and earth after he had revealed his true strength. Furthermore, Buluqing was about to arrive. After she left, there was a commotion at the south gate of Sky City. Everyone was guessing what kind of natural disaster had happened. In a cloud of dust, an old man in black staggered out with a gloomy face. He was still disabled. Below his left shoulder there was nothing left. His chest and back seemed to have been pierced through. There was a faint bloody hole that was actually transparent from the front to the back. It was a miracle that this person was still alive despite being severely injured to such an extent. The old man staggered to the city gate. He took a look and a deep hatred suddenly appeared in his eyes. The life origin energy that he had collected for 10,000 years was struck down along with his own life origin energy. Now it had turned into ashes. If he wanted to collect it again, where was he going to find another 10,000 years? Where was he going to find so many supreme martial artists? At this moment he felt cold all over. If not for the fact that he still had the power of the soul from when he was a tribulation in his body, this attack would have caused his soul to leave the world. But even so, his vitality was already greatly damaged. In the current situation, it was already very good to be able to keep his life. Speaking of recovering his cultivation, it was even more of an extravagant hope. The Dharma Supreme stayed in a daze for a while with a malicious look in his eyes. Someone asked him with concern, but he ignored them. He turned a corner and disappeared. Zi Sheqing returned to Mount Xingyun in a flash, only to see that it was still a mess. Wu Jueqing was still lying on the ground, not getting up. His white robes were already stained with blood. His face was full of hatred. He coughed again, and every cough was accompanied by a mouthful of blood. Yi Di and the others were all sitting on the ground, their faces ashen. It should be those people, but it was still those people. No one had left. Everyone knew that even if the monk ran away, the temple couldn't. They all had big families and businesses. The other party could easily dig out their roots. They might as well just wait here and end this matter. It was just death. Zi Sheqing floated down and asked, "How is it?" Wu Luqing smiled bitterly. "I'm afraid Wu Jueqing is crippled." Zi Sheqing frowned and said, "Even death can't wipe out his crimes. So what if he is crippled?" She turned to look at Yi Di and the others and said indifferently, "What do you all say?" Yi Di was disheartened and said, "Our skills are not as good as his. What else can we say? Since ancient times the winner takes all. We have nothing to say. Lord, please give us a way out and don't implicate our families." Zi Sheqing said indifferently, "If we lose this time, what will happen to our families here? Will you all let them go?" She laughed coldly and said, "Now the battle in Chenji City has already started. Your people against our people. There is a bloody battle over there, and here you all are begging for mercy?" Yi Di sighed and said, "Since this is the case, please do it, Lord." Now that he was seriously injured and couldn't move, even if he rushed over, it would be too late to stop them. What else could he say? Zi Sheqing's palm flew out and swept up that 8th grade supreme martial artist who was regulating his breathing, and smashed him into a pulp. She said coldly, "Do you think that I don't dare to kill all your big families? Or do you think that I will be punished by heaven?" Today the comments section made him very unhappy, and he was very upset. He was sleeping and was woken up by the deputy head of the forum. He quickly deleted all the posts and muted them. Chapter 11:19. "Sir, please spare Zhuge Hutu's life." On the other side, Wu Jueqing struggled and shouted, "If I don't understand this matter, I won't be able to die in peace." Wu Jueqing was extremely miserable. Lured out by the Dharma Supreme, he fought with Ning Tianya and was then lured here to preside over the array. He was supposed to be the core of some array, but in the end, his original soul was extracted here. This made Wu Jueqing almost want to commit suicide. Was he really that stupid? First, he was used by that sword master of tribulations until he died, and he did it willingly. Then he was used by the Dharma Supreme until he died, and he did it willingly. Wu Jueqing was extremely furious. The Dharma Supreme's sneak attack was extremely solid. He gathered all his cultivation in his palms and struck hard, fearing that Wu Jueqing would take revenge on him if he didn't die. Wu Jueqing's dantian was destroyed, his meridians were torn, his spine was shattered, more than 10 of his ribs were broken, and even his hip bone was shattered. If it had been anyone else, even Ning Tianya, they would have died immediately under such circumstances. But Wu Jueqing actually didn't die, just couldn't get up from the ground. If he could get up, Wu Jueqing would have pounced on him long ago. The peerless Wu Jueqing, in this slaying of the Tao battle, without using his Morning Wind Divine technique, without using his Flowing Cloud Sword technique, and without even having the time to use his trump card, the Sword Intent, he was already crippled. And it was an internal conflict. This matter really made one sigh. Heavens will really make a fool out of people to think that it was like this. You want to ask? Zi Sheqing kicked Zhuge Hutu over. For the sake of your ancestors, hurry up if you want to ask. Wu Jueqing tried hard to raise his head, enduring the pain of being cut into pieces. He asked, Zhuge Hutu, you tell me about this array. Zhuge Hutu was stubborn. He said, you were deceived by the Dharma Supreme, but wasn't I also deceived by him? And I even became a scapegoat? Wu Jueqing looked straight at him. The array. Zhuge Hutu said, the great nebula sky-splitting array of heavenly secrets has always required an 8th grade supreme martial artist's natal soul to operate. Once the array is completed and ends, the 8th grade supreme martial artist's natal soul will completely dissipate. He himself would also die. This is the reason why we, the Zhuge clan, rarely use this formation even though we have it. After all, no one would be willing to waste an 8th grade supreme martial artist. Zhuge Hutu said indifferently, as for this time, it was the Dharma Supreme who said that Lord Wu is going to sacrifice himself for 2 Dao. Naturally we won't say anything. Wu Jueqing's eyes widened. Sacrifice, for the slaying of the Tao? Suddenly he spat out a mouthful of blood and cried out, Dharma Supreme. Fuck your mother. His eyelids rolled back and he fainted. Wu Jueqing had been brought up in a strict family ever since he was young, so he rarely used vulgarities. But this time, he was so angry that he didn't even bother to choose his words carefully. Kill yourselves. Zi Sheqing looked at Yi Di and the rest and said slowly. The faces of Yi Di and the rest were ashen. This Lord Zi was indeed unwilling to let them off. Wait. Bu Luqing said, Lord Zi, please wait. I think it's better to keep these people alive. In today's battle they were all wiped out. Without anyone to send a message back to retrieve them, the remaining members of the clan will inevitably stir up trouble. Wu Jueqing said indifferently, What trouble can there be? Just kill them all over there. The thunder in the sky was getting closer and closer. Zi Sheqing looked up and said, Bu Luqing and I are leaving now. There's no time to waste with them. Feng Yuro, Yu Lingxue, the two of you bring Wu Jueqing back. Let Chu Yang treat Wu Jueqing. After all, he is the descendant of my old friend. It's best that he doesn't die if possible. Take care of yourselves. As she spoke, she raised her hand and slapped Zhuge Hutu's head. Then she kicked repeatedly. Yi Di, Xiao Se, Qing Chou and Ling Fengyun were kicked into smithereens. Bu Luqing and Feng and you didn't have time to say anything. They saw a purple cloud coming from the horizon at high speed. In the heavy snow, it could actually be seen clearly from thousands of miles away. Zi Sheqing let out a long howl. Without waiting for the purple cloud to arrive, she shouted, Take care. Farewell. Suddenly she leaped up. The graceful figure in white reached a height of 1,000 feet in the air. She recited, If we meet again in the clouds, I invite you to sweep away the fallen flowers in Jiangnan. She opened her hands and shouted, Open! With a rip, the sky was torn open. Zi Sheqing entered in a flash. They could vaguely hear continuous tearing sounds. Then they heard a delicate cry from the clouds. I'm going. And she disappeared without a trace. The Feng and Yu trio and Wu Jueqing were all shocked and stunned. At this moment, Wu Jueqing only wanted to smash a few bricks on his own head. Damn it, how crazy must he be to participate in the slaying of Tao battle of this great Tao expert? How was this an ordinary great Tao expert? She was clearly a great Tao expert who had reached the realm of tearing apart the void and traveling freely. He was really gutsy. The purple cloud in the sky had already reached the top of their heads with the faint sound of thunder. Bu Luqing seemed to have sensed something. He smiled slightly and took out a ring. This is something I prepared for my disciple, Jianghu. Second brother, please pass it to her when you go back. Yu Lingxue received the ring in a daze. He said, Big brother, you take care. Bu Liuqing's nostalgic gaze swept across the land. He shook his head and chuckled. I don't want to go, but I want to go. I really don't want to go, but I have no choice. I'll be up there scouting the path for you guys first. When you guys come, you can take care of each other. When you see old Ning, tell him that I've been fighting for the title of #1 in the world for 14,000 years. Actually, I've long known that I'm not as good as him. However, I've won this time. I'll be up there waiting for him to come and settle the score with me. Before Bu Luqing finished, a purple light had already descended from the clouds. A muffled voice shouted from the purple cloud, Who shattered the void? Who opened the great Tao? Bu Luqing raised his head and shouted, It's me. That voice said coldly, It's you. Since you've opened the door to the great Tao, why aren't you following me? A purple light descended from the clouds. With a swoosh, it landed in front of Bu Luqing and actually turned into a purple cloud ladder. It continued to climb upwards, its height and distance unknown. Bu Luqing cupped his hands and floated up the cloud ladder. Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro shouted at the same time, Big brother, take care. Before he could finish his sentence, the purple staircase disappeared with a swoosh. Bu Luqing disappeared along with it. Immediately after, that purple cloud even circled in the air for a while, as if it was searching for something. It refused to leave for a long time. Moon Breeze and the rest all knew that it was looking for Zi Sheqing. However, Zi Sheqing had already left. Even if it was very resourceful, where could it go to find her? After searching for a long time without any results, that purple cloud finally left. Bu Luqing stayed on the purple cloud, but felt that he was already isolated from the world. He wanted to look down, but he couldn't see anything. All he could see was purple. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh and closed his eyes. He didn't know what kind of world was beyond that heaven. Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro cupped their hands and stood solemnly watching Bu Luqing leave. Both of them suddenly sighed. Brother Bu going alone, I really don't know, whether it's a blessing or a curse. Feng Yuro's eyes were a little red. For so many years, I didn't have such a sincere brother to take care of me. Now I just had one and he's gone again. Yu Lingxue said emotionally, that's right. I've always thought that Brother Bu was cold and heartless, but once I got to know him, I realized that Brother Bu is such a loyal and righteous man. Let's go back. Feng Yuro stood for a while and said softly. Both of them were seriously injured, but Zi Sheqing gave them the incomplete version of the heavy elixir the moment she arrived. The heavy elixir circulated in their dantian and merged with the primordial purple vapor in their bodies. Now they could barely move. Of course, if they wanted to go into battle now, it would take a long time. The loss of life foundation and life force of a peak-level supreme martial artist was not something that could be compensated with an incomplete version of the heavy elixir. The two of them came to Wu Jueqing's side. Wu Jueqing's eyes were tightly shut, tears rolling down his cheeks. Lord Wu, if you can still hold on, I'll carry you back. Yu Lingxue said apologetically, this place is remote, we can only find a carriage after we go down the mountain. Please bear with it for a while. Wu Jueqing's spine and hip bones were shattered, he couldn't move at all. If Yu Lingxue carried him back, just this journey alone would be enough for Wu Jueqing to die 100 times. Wu Jueqing gritted his teeth and said, then I'll have to trouble you and your wife. Please understand I can't die now. If I don't take revenge on the Dharma Supreme, I won't be able to die in peace. Yu Lingxue nodded understandingly. They could totally empathize with Wu Jueqing's grievance. Because, in these 10,000 years, the two of them had been deceived like this. Yu Lingxue regulated her breathing for a while and felt that she had regained some strength. Then, she peeled off a few pieces of clothing from the corpse on the ground and made a soft bag out of it. She tried her best not to hurt Wu Jueqing's back before carefully carrying him up. Their thoughts were very simple. Since Wu Jueqing had a huge feud with the Dharma Supreme now, then they would be on the same side in the future. Having such a helper was also not bad. Although the two of them were gentle, Wu Jueqing's injuries were really so severe that they couldn't be any worse. His bones had already shattered to the point where they were about to turn into dust. The moment they moved, he still let out a muffled groan and fainted, then woke up and fainted again. Just by moving to the soft bag, he had already fainted 7 to 8 times. Once he woke up, he started to curse the Dharma Supreme with gritted teeth. Feng Yuro's face flushed red at his filthy words. However, he knew that he was relying on this deep hatred to sustain his life. If he stopped cursing, he would probably die right after that. The two of them carefully lifted the bag and slowly walked down the mountain. 3 peak-level experts and above hurried on their way. Now, their speed was even slower than that of an ordinary person. At this moment, the battle in Tianji City had already turned the sky upside down. Originally, I was very depressed, but when I opened the group chat, I choked on my water. There were 8 groups in Pride, and each group was filled with Yuan Fang and the Lord. After looking at the chat history, I laughed so hard that my stomach hurt. Below, I'll post a few words from the 3 groups. Don't be impatient, it's too funny, ha. Eternal Sword Saint, Yuan Fang, what do you think about the monthly votes? Windy Yin Suya, Lord, I think the monthly votes are in short supply. Yu Luoing Dai, Yuan Fang, do you still have the monthly votes? Eternal Sword Saint, Lord, I just saw it. I just spent 1. Torrential Waves, Yuan Fang, vote quickly. Eternal Sword Saint, yes Lord, I have voted. Yu Luoing Dai, Yuan Fang, you are indeed an obedient child. Torrential Waves, Dog Ant. Dog Ant. Windy Yin Suya, Yuan Fang, what do you think of Dog Ant? Yu Luoing Dai, Lord, I think that Lang Lang has gone crazy on Buji Island. Request for leave, Xiao Xiang Yiyu, what do you think of this, Yuan Fang? Eternal Sword Saint, I think that Lang Lang has not gone crazy, it's just epilepsy. Request for leave, Xiao Xiang Yiyu. General is right, request for leave, Xiao Xiang Yiyu. Grandpa Dao? Where is Grandpa Dao? Torrential Waves, Yuan Fang, have you seen the second update? I was sweating profusely. Chapter 1120. Orchard Palace. Ever since Zi Sheqing left, Chu Yang had been organizing the battle. An intense arrangement. There was a total of people in the Orchard Palace. Chu Yang, Wu Chanshan, Mo Qingwu, Dong Wushang, Rui Badong, Mo Lei, Meng Chaoran, Chu Lur, and the unconscious Yi Chuchen. Chu Yang had just broken through a few days ago and was a 7th grade sword saint. Dong Wushang had just broken through to become a 7th grade saber saint. Rui Badong was a 5th grade martial saint. Mo Lei was a 7th grade martial saint. Wu Chanshan was a 2nd grade martial saint. Mo Qingwu was a 1st grade martial saint. Chu Lur was a 3rd grade martial saint, but her actual combat experience. Cough not to mention. Among all of them, the weakest in battle was Chu Yang's master, Meng Chaoran, first-grade martial saint. Furthermore, he had broken through using the Tianyi divine technique during this period of time. One had to admit that this was a very uncomfortable thing. Especially the person involved, Meng Chaoran, who should be even more uncomfortable. However, Meng Chaoran was calm and composed. He didn't feel uncomfortable at all. It was as if he had long since become accustomed to this matter and did not take it to heart in the slightest. This kind of self-restraint made the juniors admire him endlessly. After all, not everyone could face such awkwardness. The first arrangement that Chu Yang made was to use his trump card. Chu Yang's trump card was of course Chu Lu. Chu Lu's poison techniques had already reached the martial saint level. Naturally, she had no actual combat experience at all. As for using poison to harm others, that was even more so the first time in her life. But she had Chu Yang by her side. There was also a sword spirit in Chu Yang's body. With these three added together, the power was almost comparable to Wu Jueqing's. What was more terrifying was that Chu Yang now had poisons that even Wu Jueqing couldn't compare to. Almost all the strange poisons in the world were under Chu Yang's control. The poisonous non of the poisonous flood dragon, the poisonous non of the human face rainbow spider, the toxicity of the black blood poisonous core vine. Anyway, other than the lust poison of the lust dragon, there were other poisons. Chu Yang contributed all of them to deal with the biggest crisis of his life this time. The entire orchard palace had 3 layers inside and outside. Chu Yang instructed Chu Lu to use her 10,000 poisons mystic technique to set up several lines of defense. Shadowless poison, colorless poison, odorless poison, mixed poison, and so on. Especially outside Yi Chuchen's room, a few more layers of poison were added from the top to the ground and from the inside to the outside. These poisons were basically useless against supreme beings because of their protective yuan qi. He could get rid of all poisons. But for those below supreme martial artist, that would be a big deal. All in all, when Chu Lu finally stopped, her poison technique had already been exhausted 3 times. Once it was exhausted, he ate the incomplete version of the heavy pill and did it again. The little girl was so tired that her face was blue and her lips were white. Of course, Chu Yang didn't stay idle while he was arranging the poison technique. He took Wu Qianqian and Rui Butong with him. Mo Qinggu, Meng Chaoran, Mo Lei and Dong Wushang's weapons were all kept away and tempered again. If a worker wants to do his job well, he must first sharpen his tools. Everything was done. The sky was slowly turning bright. Chu Yang divided them into groups. Meng Chaoran, Wu Qianqian, Mo Lei, Chu Lu, Mo Qinggu, and Yi Chuchen. They didn't need to care about anything else. And only himself, Dong Wushang, and Rui Butong would face the incoming enemies. Under Dong Wushang's suggestion and Rui Butong's strong request, Rui Butong took charge of the first line of defense, the main door. This guy, Rui Butong, who was only a 5th-grade martial saint, was used as a sharp knife. Rui Butong rubbed his fists and said shamelessly, "Unless they don't come today, as long as they do, I will die at least 3 times. Raise my skills. Let them see how good I am at stealing." This sentence made Chu Yang, Dong Wushang, and Mo Lei speechless to the extreme. The snow in the sky continued to fall endlessly. It was as if heaven and earth were quiet, full of peace and tranquility. Finally, in the white snow, the sound of footsteps could be heard from afar. People in all kinds of clothes came from afar. They were densely packed and each of them had a serious look on their faces. There were dozens of people in each team. The Yi clan in black, the Shao clan in green, the Lan clan in green, the Ling clan in white, the Shi clan in light green, the clan in purple, and the Zhuge clan in sackcloth. The Qin clan in yellow. The people from the 8 super clans arrived heavily, as if a huge mountain was pressing down on them. The leader of the Yi clan was Yi Sei, a 3rd-grade supreme martial artist. These people were also led by him. He was the only supreme martial artist in the whole team. The other supreme martial artists had already rushed to Mount Xingyun to slay the Dao. Yi Sei had insisted on coming personally to kill Meng Guyin, so he stayed behind. Yi Shiyu shrank at the very back of the Yi clan team, looking somewhat helpless. The Shao clan was led by an 8th-grade martial saint. Elder Shao had already died in the previous battle. It was the same for the Lan clan and the Ling clan. The leader of the Ling clan was Meng Sei. The leader of the Shi clan was an elder of the Shi clan called Shi Tianzhao. The leader of the Zhuge clan was naturally Zhuge Changchang. The Qin clan had been slaughtered once. This time there was no elder of the next generation to lead the team. With everyone gathered together, the Yi clan was naturally the most powerful one. The Zhuge clan as the host was ranked 2nd. The Shi clan was led by a direct descendant and was ranked 3rd and 4th. The other 4 clans were actually just hired thugs in this battle. Is such a battle worthy of us mobilizing such a large force? Shi Tianzhao muttered with some dissatisfaction. There isn't even a single expert. I heard that Chu Yang is only a first-grade monarch. Look at all of us. He turned his head back and waved his hand in a circle. Then he shook his head and smiled bitterly. The weakest among us is a second-grade monarch. Anyone who goes in will be able to defeat us. Zhuge Changchang smiled lightly. Brother Shi, do you mean that the Shi clan is enough for everything? Shi Tianzhao nodded. I think that I alone am enough. The rest of the clans can really sit by the side and drink tea or something. Then, Brother Shi, do you mean that all the credit this time will be given to you alone? Zhuge Changchang's eyelids twitched. Shi Tianzhao snorted. He didn't speak anymore. Zhuge Changchang's words. It also revealed the reason why the clans were willing to lower themselves and sent so many people to deal with Chu Yang. Chu Yang's strength wasn't much, but it represented a powerful new force. In order to deal with Chu Yang's force, more than 700 supreme martial artists were mobilized. How could the word powerful describe it? Although there were supreme martial artists over there, the real key was here. Because Chu Yang was the core of these people. So Chu Yang's death was of great importance. It was definitely a great contribution. Such a great contribution. Who would be willing to fall behind? Seeing that they had already arrived at the Orchard Palace, everyone started arguing again about who should make the first move. Everyone wanted to make the first move because everyone was confident that no matter who made the first move, the others wouldn't have the chance to make the first move. At this moment, the door of the Orchard Palace opened. A skinny man walked out from the door, holding a dagger that shone with a cold light. He stood in front of the door and grinned at the crowd, saying, "Fuck your ancestors, they really came." This sentence immediately caused everyone to be stunned, and at the same time, their bellies to explode from anger. They had never seen such an asshole. He didn't even ask for the purpose of his visit and directly started cursing. Although they did come with bad intentions. Who are you? Shi Tianzhao was the first to speak. My surname is Rui. Rui Budong pursed his lips and suddenly raised his head to shout, "A woo a woo." Everyone was stunned. This asshole, was he a wolf that became a demon? Just as they thought this, they heard Rui Budong suddenly change his voice and roar. Dog ant. Dog ant. Shi Tianzhao was puzzled. What was wrong with this guy? What she did not know was that Chu Yang and Dong Wuxiang, who were in the Orchard Palace, had a knowing and warm smile on their faces when they heard the cry, "A woo dog ant." What Rui Budong was imitating now was Luo Kadi and GMO. It seemed that this thief god Rui was missing some of his brothers. He actually started to imitate their habits in front of the enemy. After Rui Budong finished shouting, his aura suddenly changed. He became elegant and confident, smiling faintly. With his hands behind his back, he took 2 steady steps. His eyes shone with wisdom as he said, "No matter how many troops you have, I only need one trick to defeat you." Inside, Chu Yang smiled. "Amo Tianji." Dong Wuxiang laughed. Shi Tianzhao said angrily, "What the hell are you doing?" Rui Budong straightened his body and suddenly became tall and straight. He was lonely and cold, sharp and awe-inspiring. His eyes looked at Shi Tianzhao like the tip of a sword. He coldly flicked his sword and recited slowly, "One sword to the peak, life and death, victory and defeat vanish in a blink of an eye. Where can there be a soulmate in the world? When I want to look back, I've already forgotten all about her." This time inside, Chu Yang and Dong Wuxiang didn't smile. Instead they revealed deep longing. Gu Duxing. However, the people of the 8 great clans opposite Rui Budong were all stunned. This guy. What was going on? After coming out, he scolded and then changed into 4 different forms and 4 different tones. Was he singing an opera? Rui Budong stretched out his fingers and made a flower-picking smile gesture. He looked at his fingers gently and said affectionately, "When the viburnum flowers bloom, all the other flowers wither." Suddenly his expression changed again. He became proud and arrogant, lofty and domineering. He shouted, "Who in the world doesn't know me, the evil duke?" Shi Tianzhao said mockingly, "So it's the evil duke. Evil indeed. Evil as if you're crazy." Rui Budong laughed. Suddenly, he stroked his hair coquettishly and looked at himself in the mirror. But he raised his eyes, one high and one low. His lips turned up and he asked Shi Tianzhao very seriously, "Do you think I'm handsome? Am I very handsome?" When he said this, even Meng Chaoreng couldn't help but laugh. Chu Yang and Dong Wuxiang slapped their thighs and laughed. This voice was vivid and lifelike. It was Tan Tan's extremely narcissistic voice. On the opposite side, even Yi Sei, a third-grade supreme martial artist, was dumbfounded. Everyone sighed inwardly. How unlucky. They came to kill the enemy with a murderous aura, but they met a lunatic the moment they arrived. At this moment, the lunatic opposite shouted, "Brothers, let's kill the enemy together. Let's fight." Good news, the world-defying heavens has opened a group. The group number is 138482689. The administrators are all in place. Students who want to join the group, please do so quickly. Come and join the world-defying heavens with us. Take note, do not join the group repeatedly. Otherwise, there will be no point in us opening more groups. New students, the world-defying heavens welcomes you. Gee, just like the title of the chapter, it's already the end of the month. Brothers, let's fight. Requesting monthly votes. G. To be continued. Chapter 11:21. After Rui Badong finished, he suddenly smiled at Shi Tianzhao. What's your name? Shi Tianzhao was startled and said, Shi Tianzhao. Rui Badong nodded slowly and said, Shi Tianzhao? Yes, I know. Go to hell. He rushed over with his sword. Shi Tianzhao and the rest had already seen that although this person in front of them was a little crazy, he was indeed an expert. He was at least a martial saint, so they were all secretly on guard. But they didn't expect him to attack without any warning. A moment ago he was still pretending to be crazy, and the next moment he was asking for their names. Then he attacked. The blade on the other side was cold. Shi Tianzhao quickly retreated. Behind him, the two middle martial saints immediately went forward. Two clangs were heard as they unsheathed their swords, with a hint of sarcasm on their faces. Both of them had higher cultivation than Rui Badong, so they could see at a glance that this guy who was rushing over was only a fifth-grade martial saint. To the two of them it was a piece of cake. Ah! Rui Badong rushed forward with a loud roar. His voice was loud and his body was strange. He had a tragic style of, even if I die, I'll drag someone down with me. The two middle martial saints fiercely thrust out their swords. The sword light trembled and a ray of white light flashed across the sky. Rui Badong rushed over, his short sword meeting the two long swords without fear. The two middle martial saints had a cruel look in their eyes. A fifth-grade martial saint actually dared to fight a middle martial saint? He must be tired of living. Watch how we kill you with one strike. The people around them were all people with good eyesight. They knew that they couldn't lose this battle. They all crossed their arms and watched with smiles, as if they were watching two big bad wolves ravaging a little white rabbit. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the three swords crossed. Two long and one short. Two sharp sounds rang out, as if a sharp sword had chopped off two thin pieces of wood. Under the incredulous gazes of the two saint-level experts, the two swords were split into four pieces in an instant. Then Rui Badong's short sword ruthlessly slashed across their throats like a venomous dragon. Blood spurted out. Rui Badong rushed into the crowd without a word. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. This was truly a sudden and unexpected development. No one had expected that the short sword in Rui Badong's hand would be such a divine weapon that could sever iron and chop iron. Not only were the two middle martial saints caught off guard, the people behind him were basically watching the show with crossed arms. Who knew that there would be such a sudden turn of events? Two martial saint-level experts facing a fifth-grade martial saint were actually killed without even being able to withstand a single blow. Caught off guard, Rui Badong rushed into the crowd. This was really a tiger into a flock of sheep. Uploads update. Originally they were definitely not so weak. But now a series of screams rang out. Rui Badong's short sword slashed the throats of 7 or 8 people and stabbed into the hearts of 5 people. There were also a few who dodged quickly, but Rui Badong chopped off their arms and legs. Swoosh. In the pure white snow, it suddenly appeared to be a bright color. Swoosh. Swoosh. Oh. Badong. Finally he was stopped and trapped in a tight encirclement. Shi Tianzhao managed to escape with his life. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat and he was terrified. If it wasn't for the two saint-level experts from his clan blocking the attack and him retreating to the side, he would have been cut into 7 or 8 pieces by now. Still in shock, he shouted crazily, "Attack together! Kill him, kill him, kill him, he." Needless to say, the other experts had already swarmed forward, attacking with sabers, swords, fists and palms. Rui Badong shouted and fought crazily, exchanging injuries for injuries. "Since I've come out, I don't plan to go back alive. Kill, kill, kill." Almost in the blink of an eye, his body was covered in blood. He had lost count of how many swords he had taken. The few martial saints attacked together. They attacked crazily. With a bang, Rui Badong attacked. He actually stretched out his hand and broke his short sword into 2 pieces. He laughed loudly. "I'd rather die than give you this sword. I'll destroy it." Before he finished his words, he was already thrown into the air like a ball. Blood gushed out of his body and he was no longer breathing. This was exactly what everyone was thinking. Who wouldn't covet such a divine weapon? Who would have thought that this guy would be so ruthless? He actually destroyed this sword when he knew that he was no match for them and that he would die? He was really a bastard to the extreme. The martial saints rushed forward in exasperation. With a few bangs, Rui Butong's body was beaten into a pile of minced meat. However, his sudden attack had actually killed 23 experts and crippled 5 of them. In the Orchard Palace, although Chu Yang knew that Rui Butong had the ability to not die, he was still furious and almost wanted to rush out. Dong Wuxiang held him down. "It's okay." Seeing that Rui Butong was dead, Shi Tianzhao and the others couldn't hold back anymore. They roared, "Charge in! Kill Chu Yang!" Everyone roared and the various clans rushed over like a tidal wave. With a bang, the door was kicked open. Some of them even flew into the sky. The Orchard Palace wasn't big, but it was filled with people in an instant. Only the people from the clan and the Yi clan didn't bother to fight and stayed outside. The next moment, bangs, 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 all the people who flew in from the sky and were experts below 8th grade martial saints suddenly fell down like dumplings. When they landed on the ground, they were no longer breathing. Those who rushed in from the ground, those with lower cultivation, also swayed and suddenly fell down. Then their bodies turned purple and they stopped breathing. Everyone was shocked. Poison. Damn it. Retreat. Everyone retreated like a tide. Shi Tianzhao, Zhuge Changchang, and the others had treasures that could prevent poison, so they were not poisoned. However, they were so scared that they almost lost control of their bladder. There were more than 500 people who came, and almost 400 of them rushed in. Now there were less than 50 people who came out. 350 people. Just like that, they lay on the snowy ground of the Orchard Palace. There were clothes of all colors and they just lay there with hideous faces. They were no longer breathing. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a tall and sturdy young man suddenly appeared in the Orchard Palace. The moment he appeared, it was as if a majestic mountain had appeared. Just by standing there, his innate heroic aura was undoubtedly displayed. His right hand was holding a large black saber that was upside down. He raised his head and looked outside the door. As if he didn't see the people outside, he walked slowly to the people lying in the courtyard. Suddenly, he raised his hand and spat on his palm. He muttered to himself, "Boss said that to prove the enemy's death, it's best to cut off his head and see if he can still move." He raised his broadsword and chopped off the head of a corpse in green on the ground. Then, his body danced and turned into a flash of lightning. In the courtyard, more than 300 corpses were beheaded one by one. Then he kicked them one by one. More than 300 heads were piled up in the courtyard. It was a tall pile. After finishing all this, he suddenly stroked his broadsword and laughed loudly. "With a broadsword in hand, I can chop off the head of a martial saint with a smile. How delightful, delightful." Outside the door, Shi Tianzhao and the others were so angry that their eyes almost popped out. Just as they were about to reprimand him, there were a few bangs. The few 7th grade martial saints who had followed them out swayed and fell down. Then more and more people fell to the ground. Among the people who had rushed in, those who had retreated and fell down, there were actually close to 30 people. Everyone's face turned purple. After twitching a few times, they stopped breathing. A few 7th grade martial saints struggled in pain for a long time before they stopped breathing. Their cultivations were profound, but they couldn't withstand the effects of dozens of poisons that Chu Yang had carefully arranged. From the time they rushed in through the gate to the courtyard, they had already been poisoned at least 3 times, and one time was mixed poison. They had persevered and ran out, but they were already poisoned. They couldn't hold on any longer. Now, only 24 people from the few big clans who had rushed in were still standing. These people were all grade 8 martial saints and above. Every one of them had enough cultivation to resist the poisonous fog. However, when 350 people were reduced to 24 people in an instant, this huge contrast almost caused everyone to collapse. The sudden change caused everyone's bodies to tremble. Snowflakes hit their faces, chilling them to the bone. Everyone also felt that their hearts were as cold as the snowflakes. There was fear in their eyes. What kind of poison was this? So domineering? Everyone looked at the courtyard with chills running down their spines. However, they didn't notice that behind them, there was a corpse that was almost minced meat, emitting a faint red light. After Dong Wuxiang finished chopping off the heads, he took a few steps forward and stabbed the blade into the ground of the courtyard. With both hands on the hilt, he raised his head to look at the crowd outside the door. A powerful aura emanated from his body just like that. Suddenly he roared, "Who's here to die?" Along with this loud shout, a strand of fierce saber intent suddenly tore through the sky. An 8th-grade martial saint from the Lan clan collided with this sharp saber intent. He only felt a tightness in his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. Yi Xiu's face was solemn. He muttered, "Saber saint at least 7th grade. Meng Se sighed. "When I first met him in the Three Heavens he was only a saber emperor. Now he's already a saint. At that time, I already felt that this person's future was limitless and tried my best to invite him. However, the law enforcement officers beat me to it. I didn't expect his advancement to be so terrifying." Right at this moment, Yi Se of the Yi family took a step forward and opened his arms. With a loud boom, the surrounding walls of the orchard palace collapsed neatly. Bricks and stones flew out in all directions, and the place became a flat piece of land. His hands continued to dance in the air. Suddenly a strong wind blew. The strong wind swept the snowflakes into the orchard palace, blowing away all the corpses and heads in the courtyard along with the thick layer of snow. They all disappeared. It was all clean. Everyone's eyes lit up. After this, no matter how powerful the poison fog was, it should have been blown away, right? Second update. Continue to write, begging for votes. I'm so helpless. I'm only a few dozen votes away. Chapter 11:22. The corners of Yi Se's lips curled up in a cold smile. His hands danced about, stirring up strong winds that cleaned up the orchard palace just like that. Uploads and updates. Even the flower racks and stone tables in the courtyard were nowhere to be found. The wind continued to blow for the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Dong Wuxiang leaned on his saber with both hands, unmoving. His clothes fluttered in the wind, but the saber intent in his eyes remained the same, and the saber aura around him was awe-inspiring. Towering like a mountain, majestic and unmoving. In the room Meng Qiaoren praised, "Wuxiang's bearing is natural. He's truly an unparalleled hero." A proud smile appeared in Mo Layer's eyes. She pursed her lips and smiled. Chu Luer on the other hand was trembling a little. There was pride, fear, unease and excitement in her eyes. Her two little fists clenched tightly. "Big brother, did I kill all those people?" Chu Yang replied, "That's right. It's all thanks to Lu." As he spoke, he carefully observed the little girl's expression. But he sighed inwardly. Poison is really powerful. If hundreds of martial saint experts were to fight with their lives on the line, who knew what kind of consequences would be caused? However, with Chu Luer's cooperation with him, all the damage was done. She died here without a sound. Poison techniques were indeed extremely powerful. No wonder it was easy to learn but hard to master. In this world, there were countless people who cultivated and used poison throughout their lives. But from ancient times until now, there was only one poison doctor, Wu Jueqing, whose name shook the world. And now there was another Chu Luer. They are all bad people. Chu Luer's body trembled a little, but her eyes gradually calmed down. She said, "Big brother, I was right to kill them." Chu Yang tightly grasped her little hand and said, "Yes, you're right. Because if you didn't kill them, they would have killed us. It was Luer who protected us." Chu Luer finally smiled happily, pride appearing on her face. Yi Se finally stopped. He grabbed at the air casually. With a scream, he grabbed a person out of nowhere and threw him in. That person let out a scream and landed on the ground in the orchard palace. He trembled all over and sat on the ground. He looked around in horror as if he didn't understand why he was here. This person. It was obvious that they were ordinary people who lived nearby and had just suffered. Captured by darkness for experiments. Anger appeared in Chu Yang's eyes. He said indifferently, "This bastard really doesn't take human life seriously. If he wants to experiment, he can just come in himself. Why should he involve ordinary people who don't know martial arts?" Meng Qiaoren faintly smiled. Have the people of the big clans ever treated the ordinary people of the upper three heavens as human beings? Killing intent flashed in Chu Yang's eyes. At this moment, the person in the courtyard finally came to his senses. With a scream, he scrambled to run away. He shouted, "There's a ghost, there's a ghost." Along the way he ran, he tripped, he lost control of his bowels. His bowels were dripping all the way. Finally he managed to escape. Outside, Yi Se let out a cold laugh, his hands behind his back. He said indifferently, "There's no more poison." This was something that everyone could see. Their expressions were extremely ugly. Yi Se's words were clearly criticizing the various clans for being too reckless. Shi Tianzhao said, Lord Yisei, our clans have suffered too many losses. How about Lord Yisei arrange for your 2 clans to attack in the next wave? Meng Se smiled faintly and glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. You're not going to fight for credit anymore? Shi Qinzhao's face flushed and then turned pale. He said no more. So many people had been poisoned to death just now, and now a Saber Saint had appeared. He wasn't someone to be trifled with either. And the main character, Chu Yang, hadn't appeared yet. What if he went up and all his men were dead before Chu Yang could kill him? What would he use to fight for credit? That was bullshit. Yi Xiu, bring some men and charge in, Yisei ordered indifferently. Yi Xiu said indifferently, my cultivation is shallow. I can't only know how to fight in such a big battle. I'd better watch and wait outside. For some reason, there was a strange thought in Yi Xiu's heart. He really didn't want to make an enemy out of Chu Yang. Moreover, he had a vague feeling that if he made an enemy out of Chu Yang, he would definitely die a tragic death. Right now, although Yisei's seniority in the Yi clan was respected, he was from a side branch. Yi Xiu, on the other hand, was from the direct bloodline. Now that Yisei was using his seniority to order him around, Yi Xiu took the opportunity to hide at the side. In a big clan, there was a fundamental difference in status between a direct bloodline descendant and a side branch descendant. Yisei didn't have the right to order Yi Xiu around at all. Fury flashed in Yisei's eyes, but he didn't say anything more. He shouted, go in. With a wave of his hand. Meng Se waved his hand at the same time and sighed. I wanted to make a few good friends, but I didn't expect things to escalate to such an extent. The people of the Yi clan also charged in with a loud boom. Only 7 to 8 martial saint experts, Yisei, Meng Se, Yi Xiu and the others were left behind. In the courtyard, Dong Wuxiang raised his head abruptly. 2 sharp rays of saber light shot out from his eyes. Laughing loudly, he shouted, you made me wait so bitterly. Suddenly he charged forward. Like a huge mountain he started to move. His dark saber was still stuck in the ground. As he charged forward, the dark saber plowed a deep mark on the ground. It was as if a crack had opened up in the earth as he charged forward. In an instant he had charged right up to an 8th grade martial saint expert of the Yi clan. With a loud shout, Dong Wuxiang's dark saber shot up into the air. A black thunderbolt came crashing down just like that. That person let out a loud roar and raised his sword to meet the attack. With a deafening boom, the few 1st grade and 2nd grade martial saints who were about to surround Dong Wuxiang were knocked to the ground by this loud boom. Blood spurted out of their mouths. Dong Wuxiang had actually used the back of his saber to smash down this blow. With a loud boom, the sword in this martial saint expert's hand was shattered into pieces. His right hand was also shattered into pieces. Yet Dong Wuxiang's dark saber came crashing down from above without any obstruction. The back of the saber smashed onto this person's head. With a smack, it was as if a piece of tofu had been smashed into pieces. Cracking sounds rang out. All the bones in this person's body, starting from his head, were shattered. His body went limp like mud. With a loud shout, Dong Wuxiang raised his dark saber. This time he used the edge of the saber. With a horizontal slash, he charged into the crowd like a mad tiger. With one slash, no matter who the opponent was, they were sent flying backward with broken bones and tendons. With the next slash, another 3 people were cut in half at the waist. Dong Wuxiang strode forward. Stepping on a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, he was still bold and powerful. With a loud shout he said, is this all the people from the big clans can do? The saber came crashing down. With a whoosh it turned into a black whirlwind. It dashed left and right in the crowd, sweeping everything in its path. Everywhere it went, there were screams of agony. The saint-level experts below the lower grade did not even have the power to fight back when facing the saber saint. They were all killed as if they were chopped vegetables. With a loud shout, Dong Wuxiang stepped on the corpses and blood and began to charge back with big strides. The ground was already full of pools of blood. With each step, blood splattered several feet. The more than 10 people who had already charged in were pursued by him. In an instant, the ground was littered with dead and injured people. Dong Wuxiang rushed to the innermost area. Suddenly he turned around, raised his dark saber and pointed it forward. Behind him, more than 40 people were charging over. When he turned around and raised his saber, they were so frightened that they stopped in their tracks. The people behind couldn't stop in time and crashed into the people in front of them. Dong Wuxiang pointed his saber forward. The tip of the saber drooped slightly. A stream of blood formed a line and flowed down the tip of the saber. The corners of his mouth slowly curled up into a cold smile. He said calmly, who else doesn't want to live anymore? The opposite side was actually silent. Close to 100 people had rushed over and Dong Wuxiang had actually killed more than 50 of them. More than half. Looks like we don't have to do anything? Emole was a little eager to try. Most of those who rushed over are below the 8th grade. The real experts haven't made a move yet. Chuyang looked at the 30-odd people standing far away outside the door and said, "Those are the real opponents. In other words, our real danger hasn't arrived yet." Emole took a breath and said, "For more than a year, Wuxiang has always had me accompanying him in his battles. Right now, I really want to go out and fight alongside him." Chuyang smiled and said, "If you go out now, you'll weaken Wuxiang's aura instead." Meng Chaoran nodded in agreement and said, "Right now, Dong Wuxiang has successfully created a heroic spirit that can defeat thousands of soldiers with a saber in hand. This kind of heroic spirit is the most intimidating. You're a woman. If you go out now, you'll let the iron blood be tainted with gentleness and make the enemies feel that such a Dong Wuxiang isn't scary." Emole sighed and said, "I see." How could Emole not understand this logic? But now that she saw Dong Wuxiang fighting alone, her heart was always in a panic. At this moment, Dong Wuxiang had already charged again. His black clothes and black hair fluttered behind him. His dark saber was like an ink-colored lightning, charging toward the 40-odd people who had already entered the courtyard. Shouts and battle cries instantly rang out. With 3 charges he actually slaughtered all these people. The whole courtyard was covered in blood. The strange thing was that there were still 30 people left outside. Every one of these 30 people was a lower-level martial saint expert, but they actually didn't charge in. They just watched as Dong Wuxiang killed people. It's such a pity to kill such a heroic figure. Meng Se looked at Dong Wuxiang's peerlessly powerful appearance in admiration. If he wants to die, he'll need experts to accompany him in death. Yi Se snorted and said, "The reason I stopped reinforcements is not to let these people accompany him in death. This old man doesn't have such laughable thoughts of sympathizing with each other." Meng Se said angrily, "Then why did you stop them from attacking?" There was a kind of melancholy in his voice that said, "I originally wanted to be with the moon, but the moon illuminated the ditch instead." "Drive," Issei said dispassionately. "This person is a 7th grade saber saint. As everyone knows, the saber and sword saints can kill people above their level. In fact, when this 7th grade saber saint is at his peak, even if he can kill a 1st grade supreme martial artist, I won't be an exception either." This chapter has a 4th update. Double the amount owed. This is really killing me. Please get monthly votes. I'm going to continue writing. I'm just a few dozen votes away. Brothers and sisters, before the 4th update comes out, can we surpass him? Can we? To be continued. Chapter 11:23. Dreamsay asked, "Oh?" Issei sneered. Previously, his aura was already natural and unstoppable. At a time like this, even a 3rd grade supreme martial artist like me would have to pay a price to take him down. As for these martial saints, if they had gone up, they would have been killed by him one by one. No one would have been spared. Book friend upload update. Therefore, at a time like this, we'll just send some people for him to kill. Let him kill to his heart's content. After he's done, if we don't go in, he won't come out either. Naturally, he'll rest. Once he rests, his drive will be gone." Issei went on dispassionately, "At that time, we'll only need a few martial saints to take him down." Dreamsay was rather flabbergasted. "That's what you're thinking? You're really not cherishing heroes for heroes." "What heroes?" Issei said crudely. "Heroes all die too quickly." Dreamsay was so angry that he couldn't speak. "You're just letting these people die under his blade like this just to wear down his drive. You also know that if you were to take action, even if you had to pay a price, it would be a small price to pay. But in order not to pay this small price, you're even willing to let 100 people die in the hands of others?" Issei said indifferently, "Duke, let me give you a piece of advice here. Your talent and aptitude are all top-notch, but in your clan you're only a 3rd duke and not a grand duke. This is because of the order of arrival. Your young age is also one of the reasons. But secondly and most importantly, you don't have the bearing of a superior." Dreamsay was so angry that he laughed instead. "What bearing of a superior?" "The bearing of a superior is to be vicious and merciless. What should be used and what should be abandoned should be abandoned." Issei lectured, "At a critical moment, abandon 100 people. 1,000 people and protect one person. This person must have the value of being protected. For example, in a situation like this, like me. I'm a 3rd grade supreme martial artist. At first glance, it's just a small injury. To me it doesn't matter. But if the enemy is strong, At a critical moment I can leave. I can pass on information and rush to both sides. I can return alive and bring back the news that the clan needs. If I get injured while protecting them, then there's a possibility that I'll be caught along with them. The clan was still kept in the dark. It's an unjust case. Just a small injury can cause such an outcome. Completely different. Yisei said dispassionately, therefore I'd rather sacrifice the lives of these 100-odd people than use my cultivation to go head-on against the sharp aura of a saber saint whose aura has already become invincible. That's stupidity. Yisei looked at Mengsei and said, Third young master, your greatest flaw is that you value relationships and loyalty. Mengsei gritted his teeth and wanted to scold him, but he didn't know why. He lowered his head and began to think. Was it wrong to be loyal and righteous? Dong Wuxiang had already finished killing. He leaned on his saber and stood in the center of the courtyard, looking coldly at the opposite side. His heavy breathing had already slowly calmed down. During this period many people were eager to give it a try. Their eyes were bloodshot as they wanted to kill this great enemy of theirs, but they were all stopped by Yisei. At this time let him rest. Rest and let his breathing stabilize. On the surface he looks like he has recovered from his fatigue, but in reality he has lost all his sharp aura. In a battle between experts of this level, aura is very important. After a while, Dong Wuxiang's breathing finally stabilized. However, everyone could clearly sense that the invincible sharpness in him had already somewhat disappeared. With his hands behind his back, Yisei took a close look at Dong Wuxiang and said dispassionately, All martial saints, attack together and kill Dong Wuxiang. This old man will hold the line and personally capture and kill Chu Yang and Meng Guin. Everyone shouted and charged forward. Right at this moment something unexpected happened. A figure covered in blood quietly stood up and stuck close to the back of the crowd, suddenly attacking fiercely. After a few screams, everyone turned around in shock. There was a person in front of them, his entire head and face covered in blood and dirt. He had already pulled out a shiny short sword from the back of another martial saint and was about to stab it into the heart of another martial saint who had just turned around in shock. Seeing that everyone had turned to look at him, this person broke into laughter. Oh dog ant. All of you are so silly. It feels so good to be killed by me, waha. For a moment, everyone was so angry that they almost passed out. Rui Badong. This bastard wasn't dead. He was actually playing dead. All he did was play dead and 5 martial saints had been destroyed by him just like that. By right, martial saint experts basically all had a certain level of self-healing ability. Especially when they were attacked by an enemy of a lower level than them, there was basically no chance of them being killed in one blow. But for some reason all the experts who were attacked by this thief all died an unnatural death without exception. Everyone was so full of grievances that they actually didn't notice that the current Rui Badong was no longer a 5th grade martial saint, but a 7th grade martial saint. Rui Badong laughed maniacally. A bunch of idiots, haha. To think they let me off just like that, actually thinking that I'm dead just because I've collapsed. To think that they can be considered a big clan to be so careless against the enemy. Wow, I'm dying of laughter. Everyone was momentarily confused. Was that really the case? Those who had participated in the siege of Rui Badong were basically all dead, and there was actually no one to confront them now. Trash. Yisei was so angry that he also cursed loudly. In a flash he came to a dead middle-grade martial saint. With a wave of his hand, the chest of this martial saint was immediately opened up. Seeing the injuries inside, Yisei couldn't help but gasp. The heart of this middle-grade martial saint had already turned into a pile of charcoal. It actually looked like it had been burned by fire. Yisei stood up, his pupils constricting as he looked at Rui Badong. What kind of martial arts are you practicing? Yisei also knew a few types of fire-type martial arts, but this was the first time in his life that a low-level expert could sneak up on a high-level expert and even burn him to death without any external signs of injury. Rui Badong seemed to be about to slip away. Hearing that, he smiled and said, Why? Am I awesome? Aren't you a little envious? Do you want to learn? Do you want to learn? He laughed maniacally. If you want to learn, then kneel down and kowtow. Acknowledge me as your master and I will naturally teach you a set of martial arts that will allow you to dominate the world. It will benefit you for life. Come, my disciple. Your master will be waiting here. He straightened his back and protruded his belly. In this manner, as if he had already become Yisei's teacher, he even took out a piece of purple crystal. He waved his hand. Your master has even prepared a greeting gift. Murderous intent surged in Yisei's eyes. He suddenly leaped up. At an unparalleled speed, he was right in front of Rui Badong in an instant, smacking his palm viciously toward his chest. Rui Badong let out a loud cry, desperately thrusting his short sword forward. With a snap, the short sword broke. Rui Budong's body flew out like a kite with a broken string. Blood sprayed out in midair, and even his internal organs were spat out in chunks. He flew several hundred feet and landed on the ground. After rolling a couple of times, he stopped moving. His entire body was almost completely smashed. "If you survive this time, I'll call you master." Yi Sei snorted coldly, retracting his palm back into his sleeve. He shouted coldly, "Go! Kill Dong Wuxiang." Everyone found it rather comical. You, a third-grade supreme martial artist, had already smashed someone to pieces with your full strength. How could you possibly survive? Only then did everyone roar and charge inside. Opposite, Dong Wuxiang stood up abruptly, not evading at all. He charged head-on. Only Meng Sei was a little surprised. Looking at the place where Rui Badong had died, he thought to himself, he also had a short sword like this in his hand just now. Where is it now? Turning to look, he saw that in another place covered in blood, there was also a short sword that had already broken into 2 pieces. So he had 2 such divine weapons, murmured Meng Sei. Over there, it was as if heavenly lightning had collided with earthly fire. Yisei's guess was right. Dong Wuxiang had charged out in a spurt of energy. After resting, although he had recovered his stamina, his spirit had already diminished. At this moment, although he was still as mighty as ever, it was as if he had sunk into a swamp, somewhat unable to cope. After all of these people were second-grade martial saints who were 2 grades higher than him. He struck down 2 of them the moment he came up, and then he fell into a tough battle. A long howl. A sword intent suddenly permeated the air. As if a king had descended, the whole world prostrated before him. A clear and bright sword chime rang out in the air. It was majestic, shaking the sky. All the swordsmen's swords suddenly rose uncontrollably at the same time, letting out a loud and clear sword chime. It was as if the lowly commoners had suddenly seen their king and were prostrating themselves before him. Dong Wuxiang's saber, however, was unaffected. Seizing this fleeting opportunity, he abruptly brandished his saber and slashed fiercely. How could all the experts have imagined that not only was there a saber saint hidden here, there was even a sword saint? They were all caught off guard at this moment. Dong Wuxiang had struck down 3 second-grade martial saints in one go. A brilliant sword light flew out from the room, like a shocking rainbow. In a flash, it reached the crowd in the midst of the chaotic battle. With a few cracking sounds, several martial saint experts were sliced in half at the waist along with their swords. The sword light circled one round and finally landed. Everyone took a step back and looked over. They saw a young man holding a long sword. His clothes were as black as ink, and there was a smile on his face as he stood in front of them. The tip of the long sword in his hand was still dripping with blood. Chu Yang? Everyone was shocked. For a moment they almost couldn't believe their eyes. Chu Yang? Wasn't he a first-grade martial monarch? When did he actually become a sword saint? Chu Yang smiled lightly. That's me. Greetings, everyone. It's rare that you're here as a guest so early in the morning. Your hospitality is truly commendable. Here as a guest? Looking at the bloodstains all over the floor and the corpses and broken limbs, everyone was speechless for a moment. Chu Yang, so you're a sword saint. Good. So many people have been deceived by you. Why did you hide your strength for so long? Yi Sei couldn't help but feel a little furious. How did Chu Yang suddenly become a sword saint? This was too freaking strange. 4th update, 5th update to make up for what you owe. I'll be able to make up for it tomorrow and I'll be able to explode with righteousness. Gee, I'll go out and get some medicine. 4th update today. Sigh, what a mess. The deputy moderator passed by Lai Wu on his way back to his hometown and dropped off a box of Liang pears for me. It's indeed delicious. I ate 4 yesterday and 5 today. Then I ran around while typing at night. I'll stop my stomach before I eat. Otherwise it'll be such a waste. I beg for monthly votes. To be continued. Chapter 1124. Everyone was rather stunned and puzzled. Chu Yang's monarch-level cultivation was something that even the Dharma Supreme had confirmed before. Now he had suddenly become a sword saint. This kind of increase in speed was indeed somewhat inconceivable. It wasn't strange for them to be mistaken, but could the Dharma Supreme be mistaken as well? Right at this moment Yi Sei's question was heard. Why have you hidden your strength for so long? Everyone was on their guard at once. This Chu Yang was so patient, he must be up to something big. Chu Yang smiled lightly and said, I hid my strength so that I could kill some people who were kept in the dark by me at a time like this. You say hundreds of you came and yet you're blaming me for hiding my strength? How old are you? Yisei blushed. He was about to speak when Chu Yang said, "You're at least a few thousand years old this year, right? Logically speaking, even if you don't know them, you should have some knowledge. Even if you don't have any knowledge, you should at least have some common sense, right? You actually asked such a question when two armies are facing off in a battle of life and death. I have to say, your thousands of years of supreme martial artist cultivation plus your age, have you been fucking living like a dog? You obviously want to kill me, yet I still have to expose my strength in front of you? How utterly ridiculous." The door opened. Apart from Meng Chaoran and Mo Qingwu who stayed in the room according to the plan, everyone else walked out. Wu Qianqian and Mo Lei, Chu Lu, three female generals. Two were dressed in black and one was dressed in white. After spending such a long time with Zi Sheqing, Chu Lu was indeed marked by the company she kept. She had a soft spot for white. Chu Yang had bought her countless colorful clothes. She didn't care about any of them. This made Chu Yang, her big brother, rather anxious and helpless. Now the enemy's original 30 martial saints were only left with 18. And on Chu Yang's side, it seemed that they only lost Rui Budong. Yisei nodded fiercely, a fierce glint in his eyes. Good, what a sharp tongue. Chu Yang, it's a pity that no matter if you're a first-grade monarch or a sword saint, you can't escape death today. He waved his hand. He shouted, "Go. Take down all of them, dead or alive." At his command, the 18 martial saints rushed forward at the same time. Chu Yang seemed to be casually pacing back and forth as he spoke. He tried his best to taunt him, but he had taken a few steps closer without leaving a trace. He had already deviated from his original distance and direction. At that moment, when he saw the enemy charging at him, he swiftly turned around. Everyone thought that he was going to escape. However, Chu Yang's silhouette changed a few times like a ghost. Then, it turned into a group of virtual shadows. Book friend upload update, an awe-inspiring sword chi suddenly exploded in the air. The position was actually beside Shi Tianzhao. The Shi family felt that something was amiss, but it was too late. Shi Tianzhao was originally standing very far away. He was only responsible for directing and watching the battle. But Chu Yang was the first one to find him. When the sword light flashed in front of his eyes, the sword light behind Chu Yang was only 50 feet away from Chu Yang, and the distance between Chu Yang and him was less than 40 feet. Shi Tianzhao didn't expect that the enemy would target him first when he chose the safest position. Alarmed, he turned around and fled. He didn't even dare to parry. If he parried with all his might, although he wasn't Chu Yang's match, he could at least buy some time and he wouldn't die. But he didn't even turn around and leave. He wanted to rely on the Shi family's magical martial arts to escape with his life. But he didn't know that Chu Yang, the king of hell, was most proud of his martial arts. And Chu Yang knew all the Shi family's martial arts. With a flash of sword light, he stood directly in the path that he had to pass through. He shouted, "Bones as high as a mountain in my palm." With a bang, the sword light suddenly exploded. The dazzling sword light turned into a huge palm and grabbed Shi Tianzhao, who was panicking in front of him. With a few sounds, Shi Tianzhao screamed, "Save me!" Before he could finish his sentence, his four limbs had already left his body. In the next moment, a large head also flew into the air. The remaining four martial saints of the Shi clan felt as if they were struck by lightning at this moment. They roared in grief and indignation, "Young master!" Chu Yang was already charging toward them coldly on his sword light. "Don't call me young master. You're crying for help on the way to the Yellow Springs. If you're really loyal to him, kill yourself now and quickly go down to serve him." The four of them roared and rushed toward Chu Yang at the same time. In the Orchard Palace, a great battle broke out. Wu Qianqian, Dong Wushang, Chu Lu and Mo Lei were surrounded by 14 martial saints, who were attacking them in a frenzy. Dong Wushang's black saber was like a dragon, blocking them. Chu Lu shouldn't have come out, but when Mo Lei and Wu Qianqian came out, the little girl also quietly followed them out. At this moment she was under the attack of an enemy and was in danger. Yisei shouted, "The Dharma Supreme has instructed not to kill these two little girls for the time being. He wants them alive." One of the martial saints saw an opportunity. Taking advantage of Chu Lu's wretched state while she was dodging the attacks of the others, he grabbed her by the shoulder and laughed sinisterly. "Little girl, come over here." Suddenly, the countenance of this martial saint expert changed drastically. His face turned green in an instant and he let go of Chu Lu's shoulder. Chu Lu took the opportunity to escape. Another person was behind this martial saint expert. When he saw that his body had suddenly stiffened, He hurried over and patted his shoulder. "What the hell are you doing? Why aren't you moving?" Before he could finish his sentence, he also let out an "ah" and stood rooted to the spot. His face turned green for a moment and then there was no more sound. The reason why Chu Lur came out was because she had covered herself with poison and had even channeled the power of the poisonous pill of the human face rainbow spider onto the surface of her body. Apart from the fact that Chu Lur couldn't force this poison out of her body with her current cultivation, it could be considered the most powerful poison technique at the moment. That person suddenly grabbed her shoulder and poisoned her. His entire body immediately stiffened. Another person came over and patted his shoulder. He was poisoned as well. A figure flashed. Wu Qianqian, who was dressed in black, dodged left and right and came over to take care of Chu Lu. When she saw that these two people were actually standing still, she slashed her sword at them without thinking. Swoosh. Fresh blood splattered and two heads flew into the air. Wu Qianqian was shocked. It wasn't that Wu Qianqian had never killed before. On the contrary, she had definitely killed many people. But what surprised her the most was that she had slashed out with her sword. She clearly saw that these two people's eyeballs seemed to have moved, but they didn't dodge at all. She had actually beheaded two martial saints with a single slash of her sword. When did she become so powerful? Chu Lur was still in shock. Seeing that Wu Qianqian was so mighty and powerful as she killed two martial saints with a single slash of her sword, she couldn't help but clap her hands in joy. "Sister Qianqian, you're so capable." Wu Qianqian was so surprised that she almost wanted to scratch her head. She forced herself to control herself and pulled Chu Lur to one side. At this moment, Dong Wushang suddenly let out a long howl. His dark saber rolled and turned into a huge black wave. He directly activated the human saber unity and started to fight with all his might. Chu Yang roared, "Blood waves under the sword." His long sword soared into the air like a silver dragon and rushed forward in the air. As he shouted, "The world of mortals is heartless," two of the four martial saints of the Shi clan screamed at the same time. Their bodies were stirred into a rain of blood. A few more wounds were added to Chu Yang's body. The pressure on Dong Wushang increased. He directly activated the human saber unity. In the midst of the rolling black wave, someone suddenly screamed and went silent. Then Dong Wushang's dark saber slashed over and a ball of meat paste was formed. Then the other few people also screamed and were directly chopped into pieces by Dong Wushang's dark saber. Dong Wushang's human saber unity actually killed four martial saints consecutively. The pressure on the surroundings was greatly reduced. 18 saint-level experts. After a few rounds there were 8 of them. This made everyone feel incredulous. Even Dong Wushang himself was so bewildered that he almost fainted. He was very strong and Dong Wushang had never underestimated himself. But he wasn't strong to the extent that he was actually this strong. In a battle of life and death, he actually effortlessly killed several martial saints consecutively? Then, could it be that these low-grade saint-level experts were all eating cabbages? There was a moment of silence. Yisei didn't expect this either. At this moment, Yisei, Mengsei and Zhuge Changchang all widened their eyes in shock. It couldn't be, right? Even if the other side had the saber and sword saints, their men were martial saints after all. 18 martial saints against 2 7th-grade saber and sword saints had actually lost 10 of them like a whirlwind. How could they have died so quickly? But the truth was right in front of them. They couldn't deny it. The remaining 8 people retreated in shock. Looking at the messy corpses on the ground, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. A chill ran down their spines and a sense of fear rose in their hearts. No one was afraid of being killed in battle. But to die so mysteriously and clearly not from poison, that was just too puzzling. All of this was inconceivable. What's going on? Yisei frowned and took a few steps forward, glaring fiercely at Chu Yang. Chu Yang shrugged and said, "Who knows what's going on with them? Maybe they've lived for too long and are already tired of this mortal world." As he spoke, King of Hell Chu said compassionately, "Good. As the saying goes, the mortal world is the path of heartlessness. Early release is better than anything else. So it's my sword that awakened the desire in their hearts like the evening drum and morning bell. That's why they died calmly and faced death with a smile. They've seen through life and death and attained the great Tao." Yisei was so angry that his nose was almost crooked. What kind of bullshit explanation was this? Right at this moment, another series of tragic cries suddenly rang out. Yisei turned back to look and couldn't help but widen his eyes in anger. Of the remaining 8 low-grade martial saints, the heads of 4 of them had popped up from their necks and 4 pillars of blood shot up into the air at the same time. Their heads had actually been chopped off. Behind them, a man covered in blood and grime, holding a short sword and looking at him with a grin. He said, "Didn't you say that as long as I come back to life, you'll call me Dad? Call me Dad." Begging for votes. I want to be number one no matter what. I'll continue to write. Calling for everyone's support. Gee, to be continued. Chapter 11:25. Issei almost fainted. This hateful fellow before him with a wretched look on his face was none other than Rue Badong. He actually came back to life at such a critical moment. Issei stared at Rue Badong as though he wanted to eat him alive. Out of the 500 people who had come here, only 4 low-grade martial saints and himself, the leader, were left. Including Zhuge Changchang, Meng Sei and Yi Xiu, there were only 8 of them left. And the other party was actually still alive. And this fellow in front of him actually appeared right before his eyes again, alive and kicking. At this moment Issei was so furious that he almost wanted to die. Opposite him Rue Badong was still jumping around clamoring, "Issei, your father is right here. Why aren't you calling me father? You unfilial son. Hurry up and call me father. Call me father." With a loud crack Issei ground one of his teeth so hard that it broke. This was absolutely intolerable. But this was something he had said himself. Now that someone had something against him, there was nothing he could do. Chu Yang burst into laughter. "Badong, congratulations on taking in a 3rd-grade supreme martial artist. Ah, this is really something worth celebrating." With a loud roar Issei charged toward Rue Badong and struck out a palm. Rue Badong laughed and actually didn't dodge at all. Instead he struck out with his own palm as well. The wind from his palm carried with it scorching heat. With a loud bang the 2 palms collided in midair. Rue Badong let out a muffled grunt and rolled out like a rubber ball, continuously rolling for a distance of 100 to 80 feet. He kept vomiting blood. Yet he actually raised his head from the ground. "You hit your father just like that? You traitor. How dare you be so unfilial, how dare you betray your own master?" Issei roared furiously and charged over again. Right at this moment Chu Yang and Dong Wushang exchanged glances at the same time. The 2 of them flew up at the same time. Sword Saint, Saber Saint, man and sword as one, man and saber as one. Silently they shot toward Issei. In the sky, a faint white figure appeared. At the speed of light, it also charged toward Issei, completely invisible to the naked eye. Issei was just about to make his move when he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine, as though something terrifying was about to happen. He hastily dodged to the side. A white figure flashed past his eyes with a whoosh. With a chi sound, a line of blood appeared on his throat. The knight was horrified. Who were they? How could he have such speed? Turning his head, he saw a saber gleam as large as a mountain and a sword gleam as large as an ocean. 1 saber and 1 sword were surging toward him. Issei let out a loud cry, his long sword striking out swiftly. There was a clang. The long sword was cut in half by Chu Yang's sword, and the remaining half was chopped into pieces by Dong Wushang's saber. However, the strong energy attached to it made the 2 men groan miserably at the same time, and their bodies tumbled backwards. Issei didn't move at all. He casually tossed his sword aside and flew over to grab the 2 of them. His heart was already filled with hatred. He must kill these juniors. But at this moment he suddenly felt a numbing itch on his throat. After feeling the numbness, it suddenly turned into an unbearable itch. It was as if there were tens of thousands of ants crawling in his bone marrow. Issei couldn't help but reach out to scratch it. However, this scratch made a tearing sound. He tore off a piece of flesh from his throat. It was dripping with blood. Even at this stage it didn't stop the itch. Instead it became even more itchy. But Issei didn't dare to scratch anymore. He knew that he had probably been poisoned. If he scratched again he might just break his own throat. But he was extremely puzzled. When had he been poisoned? What kind of poison could actually poison a supreme martial artist? Right at this moment the white figure flashed again. Issei was enraged. He raised his palm, which abruptly turned into a mountain in midair and came crashing down. With a chi sound, a white figure darted out from the edge of his palm at an extremely fast speed. What is that? Issei resisted the extreme itchiness, held back the urge to scream and scream madly. With extreme fury and terror he shouted, "Come out!" The white figure flashed and landed on Chu Yang's shoulder. Issei took a closer look. On Chu Yang's shoulder was a small animal that was only half the size of a palm. It was snow white all over, petite and adorable and furry. By the looks of it, it definitely didn't weigh half a kilogram. Right now, it was looking at him very disdainfully with its 2 small, sparkling eyes. It reached out a petite and adorable little paw that wasn't even half the size of a little finger and combed its own beard. There was actually a sense of complacency in its demeanor. Wind Fox. Issei's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He shouted, "Impossible. How can a tiny little wind fox possibly hurt me? Ordinary wind foxes may not be able to, but this one is different." Chu Yang pulled the wind fox from his shoulder and held it in the palm of his hand. Then he sneered, "The wind fox's innate talent is limited. Generally, it's already a great fortune for a spirit beast to become a grade 1 spirit beast. But this wind fox, hee." Very cooperatively, the wind fox stood upright in Chu Yang's palm and made an awe-inspiring pose. Its two little front paws were akimbo, its gaze arrogant and insufferably arrogant. "What's wrong with this wind fox?" asked Issei furiously. "Go, let him have a look." Chu Yang tossed the wind fox out. With a squeak, the wind fox's snow-white body flew out. In mid-air, it suddenly expanded abruptly and turned into a huge fox that was almost half the size of a courtyard. This fox was snow-white all over, but its eyes were like purple gemstones shining brightly. Although its body had become incomparably huge, it still gave off the feeling of being petite and adorable. On this wind fox's tail, there were 4 big furry tails that were swaying gently like 4 big fans. On the other side there was a 5th big tail that was already half grown out. It was furry and a little short, but it was also swaying. It was really adorable. The moment the wind fox revealed its true form, it instantly covered a distance of several feet and bit off the necks of the remaining 4 martial saints one by one. Then it used its claws to pick up a big clump of snow on the ground. Slowly it wiped its mouth and teeth. After wiping it clean, it actually opened its mouth and exhaled. Then, it sniffed a few times with its little nose, as if checking if there was any smell of blood in its mouth. In summary, this was a wind fox that loved cleanliness very much. 4 tails? 4.5? Issei's eyes bulged out at once. This time he almost forgot about the numbness and itchiness in his throat. How is this possible? What's so impossible about this? Chu Yang looked at him sympathetically. This wind fox is a 12th grade beginner spirit beast. Isn't it very easy for it to launch a sneak attack on you when you're caught off guard? Issei's face was ashen, his body also starting to tremble. Impossible, the wind fox is not poisonous. What kind of poison can poison a supreme martial artist? This is absolutely impossible. Chu Yang said mockingly, "Of course the wind fox is not poisonous. The poison on its claws is naturally smeared on. No poison can poison a supreme martial artist?" Chu Yang sneered. "Supreme martial artist Yi, have you heard of innate poison?" Innate poison. Upon hearing these words, Issei was finally disheartened, a look of despair coming over his face. As a 3rd-grade supreme martial artist, how could he not know how powerful innate poison was? Chu Yang kept him on rambling, but he was also observing his expression and reaction. The more he spoke, the better. "Didn't you not understand? I'll explain it to you in detail. The more time passes, the faster your poison will take effect." The wind fox. It was Chu Yang's greatest defensive trump card this time. The wind fox was already a 5th-grade spirit beast in the northern wastelands of the upper 3 heavens. After following Mo Qingwu, it was even more in the limelight. Under the inexhaustible nourishment of various elixirs and resources, it swiftly reached the peak of the 10th grade. Logically speaking, this should have been a bottleneck. But when it followed Mo Qingwu to Qinji City, it swallowed a peak of the 10th grade spirit beast's inner core that Yi Di gave it at the city gates. It actually reached the 11th grade with a whoosh. After finding Chu Yang, when Chu Yang was treating Chu Lure's illness, he used the poisonous core of the human face rainbow spider but didn't use the inner core, which benefited this little fellow. The human face rainbow spider itself was an 11th grade spirit beast. After the wind fox digested the inner core, its strength skyrocketed. It reached the peak of the 11th grade. And after Chu Yang obtained the primordial purple vapor, under Zi Sheqing's instigation, he also stuffed a ball of it to this little fellow. This was really bad. The wind fox's advancement from the peak of the 11th grade to the 12th grade was the most important juncture in its life. Originally, it wasn't strange for it to be trapped here for the rest of its life. But a ball of primordial purple vapor directly eliminated this juncture completely. The wind fox rushed up to the 12th grade like a rocket. Now, the wind fox was equivalent to the first 12th grade spirit beast in the land of spirit beasts that had already appeared in the heavens continent. A 12th grade spirit beast, if it was a battle type 1, was enough to fight a 5th grade supreme martial artist. Although the wind fox's specialty wasn't in battle, it was easy to deal with Issei now. The reason why Chu Yang was confident in his arrangements and why Zi Sheqing left without worry. Everything originated from the wind fox. This was the fundamental reason. I see. Issei smiled bleakly. He only felt that his throat was getting more and more numb and itchy. Slowly, his entire body started to itch, as if even his skull was already being bitten by thousands of ants. It was so unbearable that he wanted to die. He forced himself to stand up straight, but he felt that his combat power was disappearing bit by bit. His fighting spirit was also dissipating bit by bit. At this moment, the only thing he wanted was to die. Mengine, come out and kill me. Issei shouted. Don't you want to take revenge? Come on, I'll fulfill your wish. Quickly come out and kill me. Ah. A real man can't die in his own hands no matter what. Come on. Quickly come out and kill me. Issei screamed. The innate poison was spreading in his throat. Once this innate poison from the mother's body was produced and turned into a poison, even a supreme martial artist wouldn't be able to withstand it. Clang. With a sword chime, a shiny sword shot out from inside the window. It was Ling Hanwu's sword. I'll continue to write. There will be more updates. Damn it, I've been having diarrhea these few days. I'm really craving for food. I reap what I sow. What else can I say? Everyone please vote for me. I'm getting closer and closer. My chrysanthemum is itching. Please protect my chrysanthemum. Brothers, the monthly votes are related to my chastity. Everyone, let's work harder. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.